Time. Let's go ahead and get started with our workshop if you could. I'll turn it over to you, Tyler.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've spent a great deal of time talking about Sandy's wastewater treatment issues and our discharge options. We have a couple members of our Stantec team, Dick Talley and Heather Stevens. I was gonna say the Heather from your office's last name, my apologies. Here this evening to help answer some questions, but really the intent of this work session tonight is to ensure that our newer council members are up to speed on what's been studied, what hasn't been studied, where we're at, the two sort of potential viable treatment options going forward, where we're sitting between those two, answer any remaining questions. Since the last meeting that we had in December, we've also published a one-pager that outlines all the different treatment options that we have studied to date, the viability of those options. So wanted to give Stantec an opportunity to provide any additional information around what's been studied and what hasn't been studied, or what's been studied and why those have been preferred or viable versus other things that have not been viable. The staff report has a great deal of information in there and links to the prior council meetings we've had on these topics. And so I think really the intent tonight is a more informal conversation, just making sure everyone's up to speed and on board with where we're at and where we're going. Mayor, I know this was a request from you to sort of get this on the agenda, so I don't know if you have any additional comments you want to provide or.
Yeah, I would just say that this is an opportunity for the new members to kind of get up to speed on, what we've looked at in the past and how we got to where we are now with the alternatives that we are looking at, and it's an opportunity for everybody on the council to ask any other questions. If there's any other options out there that we have not included in this that we need to ask about, let's do that now. So because like I said, we're starting to we're getting funding and signing MOUs and IGAs and things like that, memorandums of understanding or agreement and intergovernmental agreements and all. And so we have to be, all on the same page when we vote to sign those documents. So want to make sure that we've gotten all our T's crossed and I's dotted. So please speak up and ask questions. This is a great time to thank you for the consultants coming to help us just get up to speed. It's a lot to take in. So yeah.
Dick and Heather, do you want to come up to the table just so the microphone will pick you up with any discussion and conversation? Any initial questions, or do you want me to just kind of get some background and see?
Just kind of like the alternatives that were considered but not carried forward would be the place to start, so that and why they weren't carried forward. And if there's any questions on why they weren't carried forward or other iterations of those that.
Heather, turn it over to you then, if you want to just jump right into alternatives that were studied and why some were advanced and some were not.
Yeah, and sure. Heather, anything you want me to throw up on the screen, like the one pager or whatever, just let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it would be helpful to pull the one pager up.
Sure.
I've got that here, and we could just kind of talk through those in order if that makes sense.
Just a moment. Thanks for pulling that. No problem.
Got the challenges and options page.
I'm gonna say one
Yeah.
pager looks a lot
Like that,
better with all
yeah.
the formatting compared to that spreadsheet version we had.
We just sent you data and then we prettied it up once we
That was rough.
honed in on the data.
Okay, so I'll just try to zoom in.
And maybe before we jump right into this, Dick and Heather, if you could both just give 30 seconds on who you are and your role in our project for the two newer members of the council that maybe haven't seen your faces numerous times.
Sure.
Just to make sure everyone knows who's presenting and talking.
All right.
Hey.
Heather Stevens, with Stantec in the Portland office here. I've been in consulting for more than 25 years now, doing wastewater planning for utilities around here. So for the city of Sandy, I'm leading the Sandy Clean Water program work that's focused on the wastewater treatment system improvements and strategies to meet your consent decree requirements and provide the capacity needed for your long-term needs.
Thank you. Dick Talley, also Stantec, out of the Portland office. Been in the engineering profession for 40 plus years, helping communities struggle with very similar challenges that Sandy faces. I serve as kind of your program manager overall between both the water and the wastewater sides. I'm helping kind of guide and shape kind of the direction that we're going and providing, planning decisions that you can make with some good information. So we're aligned, and we've got a big hill to climb, and schedule's not necessarily in our favor. And so trying to be fairly expeditious in our decision making but doing that with an eye on costs and trying to do that intelligently and build for the future. I think maybe a few words before we start, if we look at Sandy's wastewater problem, I think a lot of us question, how did we get here, right? I mean, that's a pretty normal reaction by any of us when we're faced with rising costs or increased utility rates. And, if you look at Sandy's situation, just where it's geographically located, it's one of the challenges that we face, right? Where do we go with our wastewater effluent? And although sitting at the base of Mount Hood and all the great water sources we have, they're all fairly well regulated in terms of what and how we discharge treated effluent. It is important to recognize that we have to kind of change, I think, the perception of treated effluent in Oregon and treat it as a resource, a renewable resource. But as of yet, it's still viewed as requiring a permit for discharge to any surface body or land application or whatever. So a lot of that goes against Sandy's trying to grow as a community, remain have that vitality. And in order to do that, we have to secure, to some extent, kind of our most basic things, water and sewer, right? And so the sewer thing has been extremely challenging in that the receiving streams that we have at close proximity to us are fairly small in size. And so they're limited by the amount of water we can, regardless to some extent of the quality, we're kind of challenged. And it's variable throughout the season, right? And our flows are variable throughout the season as well. And so trying to dovetail that all together, and there's been a lot of work done for Sandy over the last 30 years. There's been a lot of different evaluations of this problem. So it isn't something that just landed here, right? I think what probably was the driving catalyst was when EPA and DOJ stepped in and said, okay, we need a more secure future for Sandy and the resources, right? So I think that was maybe the catalyst that got us to this point tonight, but it's not a new problem for all of us to challenge to work out. And it's not an easy one to solve. So a little bit of preamble there of why we're here and how we got here, and kind of the recognition of the leadership that's in the room tonight is going to be the leadership that's going to have to, at long last, bring about a solution for our residents and our friends and neighbors out there that lasts well into the future and not just more or less kick the can down the road, right? And so we're here, and I'm very anxious when Tyler called and said, hey, could you come and visit? These are the favorite times when you get to sit down face to face and really ask, don't hold back. If there's something you just don't feel right about, sing out, let us know, and we'll try to answer it the best we can. If not, we'll go get you the data that does answer that question. So thank you for the opportunity. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so if it's okay, I'll just walk through kind of the middle box in this one-page challenges and options, talks about the things that have been evaluated over the years in the original facility plan, and then in the facility plan amendment that's been developed over the last couple of years. So we'll just kind of take those one at a time, and folks can ask questions if they have anything, Jeff, Tyler, Dick, if there's anything that I don't mention, just, or AJ, pipe up, and we'll just kind of keep it casual. So, so the first one on the list was upgrading the existing plant. We did touch on this in some of our previous presentations to council, that this, would be you know, a logical option, if it weren't for the constraints on discharge in Tickle Creek. You know, and that's something that's in the Oregon administrative rules and very difficult to change, and really pushes the treatment to kind of limits of technology for treatment processes, and also, you know, leaves the city with the challenge of not having some place to go with your effluent during wet springs and wet falls when there isn't any demand for irrigation water. So that is something that's been evaluated, but really isn't a viable long-term option under the regulatory framework that we have in place right now.
I think it is important to recognize, though, that the community has made, what, 20 million roughly investment in that plant over the last 3-4 years.
Oh, in the plant itself. like-
Yeah.
Yeah,
And part of that was driven by, you know, the plant itself needs to perform at certain criteria, right? We're regulated very closely by the performance of the plant and its ability to treat kind of the variable flows, right? And so, you know, it's not a case that, well, we just abandoned that plant entirely. We can't, right? Because no matter what solution that we come to as a community, there's a period of time to get that permanent solution in place. And so it's an asset, a very high value asset for the community, and continuing to put the struggle I think we're all going to have in this room is, when is it a good investment in that plant for the next 5 to 10 years without overdoing that and without stranding assets, right? Or stranding money, because every dollar is so precious to us all, right? So how do we put the right level investment to maintain compliance and health and safety of our community in a sensible manner, but at the same time not overspend money there in the long run? Because the solutions that Heather's talking about are not, oh, this is our plant today and we're just going to add some things to it. The solution she's talking about is a totally implementation of new technology. You know, the plant there is what, 60 years old, 50 years old? So you're talking about, and you know, all of us know what all technologies have done in the last, say, 2 decades, right? And so there's a lot of new treatment technologies that are out there. And in order to implement them, you pretty much got to tear down what's there and rebuild. So there's not a ton of salvage value there when we talk about rebuilding the plant, other than obviously the value of the land and the fact that it collects all the wastewater. So we can't just walk away, right? We have to maintain some viability there. What she's talking about would be to come in there and just surgically replace in sequential order with new process units, new process technology that would ultimately end up in a new treatment approach to treatment at the end. So you can kind of, hopefully that helped you kind of appreciate that's not a $20 million or $10 million, whatever fix, right? These are pretty expensive when you start replacing really from your headworks clear to your disinfection and your outfall. Sorry.
Heather, when you mentioned the regulatory limitations on Tickle Creek, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about like the 3 basin rule, for example. But one thing that we're trying to do a better job of explaining in recent months is that's not the whole story. It's
Right.
not just that. There's
Yeah.
also the dilution ratio requirements. So can you speak a little bit more to?
Yeah. So there are, you know, the 3 basin rule is, you know, that's the limit on, you know, how much, you know, constituent, I hate to call them pollutants, but you know, basically what, you know, how much material you can put in the creek and when you can put it in there. And then there are other sets of rules that are, you know, through DEQ policy and standards are implemented for all receiving streams in the state of Oregon. So the dilution rule is one of those that limits how much, what percentage of flow the effluent can be in the creek. So obviously when stream flows are low, that you can't put as much effluent into the creek. There are also water quality standards in addition to the three basin rule that could apply down the road to other constituents that, you know, perhaps become a limit in terms of, you know, aquatic, you know, fish or other aquatic organisms and that kind of stuff living in the stream. So the dilution rule is the one that has been the most prevalent in planning for the current needs at Tickle Creek. But yeah, that Jeff, that's a good point. There's a three basin rule, and then there are other water quality standards that are applied across the state that would also apply to Tickle Creek.
Heather, is the 10% dilution rule the same for all creeks, or do other cities have different percentages based on how big their creeks or rivers are, or?
I think that is pretty standard. There are some, I think that, well, there might be other situations where there are different requirements that are applied, but I think the 10-to-1 dilution ratio is generally what's in the water quality standard.
And so my understanding is it doesn't matter if, even if it's, you know, if it's 15% and it's all clean, it's still too much.
Yep.
Which
Yep.
seems a bit, you know, especially when you've got a creek that's, you know, reducing stream flow to climate change or whatever, you know, more water for fish would seem to be a good thing,
Mhm.
and yet not so much.
Yeah.
We're not, I mean, how flexible is that 10% rule? Is that set in stone that can never be changed, or?
I think that I'm not the regulatory expert on the team. We have somebody that we could get a more complete answer to. I believe that would require a change to the water quality standards that DEQ has implemented, and I'm not 100% sure on or clear on what the process is to change water quality standards. It's not the same as changing the three basin rule. It's not part of the administrative rules, but it is a kind of a similarly complex change to kind of the governing standards for water quality in the state.
I think the other important piece of this story is that based on our current flow monitoring and our best estimates right now, jump in if I say these numbers incorrectly, but based on the flow in Tickle Creek and our discharge of treated effluent, even if we were to reinvest in the existing plant for the long term is max like 14-ish years,
Mhm.
and then the stream flow and our discharge would exceed that 10% rule. So that buys us a little time, but it doesn't fix the problem, and that requires multi-millions of dollars in investment for something that doesn't get us more than, you know, 10 years down the road before we're needing to start building the next fix so that it's online by the time we hit that dilution issue.
Well, I think what we're seeing, and you brought it up, Mary, we all can appreciate, or I think that there's less snowpack. It comes at different times of the year now than it has historically. And so we're seeing these smaller streams. They really go through kind of a flash in the spring and a flash right before snow. But boy, the rest of the year, those flows year over year are declining. And so when you think about us being that stream being a recipient of our waste, and our waste stream volumes are going up and the ability to discharge is going down, we're going opposite directions, right? And so I think that's a lot of why trying to figure out another solution for that discharge that's independent of Tickle Creek is probably the permanent solution that we're all trying to find, right? How do we get out of that stream year round?
Can you speak more to that infiltration thing? Because that's, you know, something that has worked in other areas with different kinds of soils.
Yeah. That was one that was has been investigated for a while, and most recently as part of the facility plan amendment, there was some, you know, sites and, you know, in-field testing done where they dug a test pit and put water in it and determined what the infiltration rates, observed what the infiltration rates were in soils around here, and the amount of land, there basically was very little infiltration, you know, especially during during the times that we would be looking to get rid of the most water. So that really is something that wasn't a feasible solution. And another consideration around infiltration that, you know, wasn't specifically looked at here, but as being is an issue that other communities are facing is, you know, typically, you know, unless the city owns a lot of that land, you know, if you're looking at a partnership with a private entity to use their land for something like infiltration, then that, yeah, you know, you're, you know, the long-term security of that solution is not something that's within the city's control and can change, you know, relatively quickly.
The infiltration, you know, too, most of us were little kids and we played with water in our sandbox. And so we get the idea that if you have rocks and gravel with void spaces, water goes away, right? Well, the problem with that is the connectivity to groundwater then, right? So if it goes away too quick, then it's probably linked and it's going to show up someplace that you maybe don't want it to show up. The flip of that is if there's a lot of clay in the soil, then those, what they call interstitial spaces or the void spaces are very small and very tight. So water doesn't percolate into the ground so fast. And so trying to find that sitting on the banks of a volcano, like we all are here, right? We have a lot of variable geology in the community and trying to find those places. And then are those places for sale, right? How large of a space do we really need? Is there any connectivity to anybody's groundwater source? All become, and I think probably all of you are familiar, is it Redmond? Redmond went to wetlands treatment?
Prineville.
Yeah.
Prineville.
And actually, the council visited
Okay.
that facility.
Oh, outstanding.
I'm sorry, yeah, some of the
Yeah.
members up here.
You know, and there again, and I'm not sure, do you know, was that like 200 acres or 80 acres or something like
Yeah, I think it's more like 200.
200 acres?
It's kind of as far as you can see.
Yeah.
You know, naturalized treatment is obviously very viable. I mean, Mother Nature has the ability to do that. Part of what we're challenged with here is it freezes a lot of the year here, right? And
Freezes
so
there too, though. It freezes in Redmond as well.
exactly.
Yeah.
And those in Redmond, as I understand that one, is most of that's going to be done on BLM land.
Yeah,
Prineville.
but Prineville was,
Or I mean, Prineville,
Yeah.
yeah.
we were talking about the Prineville
Right,
example, not the
Redmond.
Red.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I changed
Okay.
cities. I knew that was my.
No,
I said,
no, no, no.
we started saying Redmond
That's
and I stuck with it. So that was my
Yes.
fault, Prineville.
Yes, Redmond's
Yes.
gonna be on BLM.
I've toured
Okay.
that facility.
Yeah. What did you think? I mean, what
I
was
thought
your
it was
impression?
amazing.
The effectiveness of it or what, when
All
you
of the
say,
above, all of
Okay.
the above. So they've created a complete wetland there where birds come in and people come and bird. They've got walking paths around it. They've got kiosks where grade schools come and do field trips. And they have QR codes and they do science projects. I thought it was fantastic.
yep. And I think the engineer and all of us agrees with you on all of that above. I think, you know, help me out. What's the name of the pond?
Rosin Lake.
Rosin Lake. I know that was early on,
Yeah.
right? I mean, 3 years ago or something. Adam Odell, I think you guys have all met Adam, right? And he lives over in that country and he's like, well, wow, why don't we just go there and do that, right? And then we dug into it a little bit and as from what we could tell, there was significant concerns about that from the residents around there. And I think there was some question there about kind of the legality of it, given the past use of that. But to your point, if you can find us a place like we haven't been able to find 200 acres somewhere that we're not piping it a long ways that we can buy and explore that. That's part of the challenge to that is how do we implement that? The idea is fantastic. I totally agree with you. Love to do that. But I don't know how to implement it.
And then there's still the need to
Just
kind of get
because-
rid of all the sludge, right?
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, you still have to have a treatment plant, right?
But that is an option. We just need a space big enough.
Yeah,
Well,
within a
It's not
striking
just size,
distance.
though.
yeah, I mean, what I was reading about was that our soils aren't conducive to, again, you know, it's not like Prineville where you've got all that basalt,
Yeah,
fraction basalt where all the water is.
Getting away from
You
it.
know,
shifting away.
yeah, and Sandy was not named for its soils, so, we know that, so,
Yeah, but
yeah.
you start talking about, I know where you're going, you're talking about clay. 1/3 of the United States is on red clay. I mean, the entire state of Georgia is on red clay, but they have wastewater treatment. So I guess what perplexes me with this entire thing is that of all the options and things that we could do, the most expensive to the residents in this community is the one that we're told we're left with. And that's really hard for me to swallow. Because there are other options. There are cities all over the US that do all sorts of reclaiming their wastewater, right? So one of the concerns that we continually have here, and we've talked about it over the years, is wildland fire, right? So we're tying in with the city of Portland for our water, so that we have more water to potentially fight fire. That's one of the reasons we're doing it. Well, we have a renewable resource in wastewater that we could use for that exact purpose. You know, let alone, I mean, there's tons of cities who use their wastewater. It goes back into neighborhoods to water their lawns, which would be something that people wouldn't have to pay for. You know, we talk about water conservation in the summer because we have limited water supply. I mean, it seems like we have a potential for a renewable resource in our wastewater that we're not capitalizing on.
Oh, man, you and I need to like get after it together, because I am all about that, right? Water is water. It's two hydrogens and one oxygen. We've got to get away from labeling it as wastewater or drinking water. It's one water, right?
So.
The
can I
challenge
interrupt
is-
just a Second.
Yep.
If you're looking at 200 acres, what dollar amount per acre are you looking at that makes that,
I'm not even having that conversation right now.
if you. So to see if it's a viable option and it truly is less expensive, you have to put some sort of estimate of what 200 acres is gonna cost you.
Well, I guess that's fair. But I mean, I'm simply asking questions.
If it's $1 million an acre for developable land, it's more expensive. It's $500,000 per acre. You're still 100,000, you're still $100 million.
I'm a little bit confused about the, it says, recharging the groundwater. This alternative isn't legal, and I'm not quite sure how Prineville does it if it's not legal, or maybe it's legal in Prineville, but not, I don't know, help me understand that.
so I believe it comes down to how that effluent gets into groundwater, so like Dick was saying, if you are, when we say here that it's illegal to put that directly into the groundwater, so to not have to mitigate the problem with the soils being so tight and not being able to infiltrate, it seems like you would want to just put a pipe in that would allow you to discharge the effluent.
We call that groundwater insertion in the early day.
Yeah,
First
yeah,
time.
recharge. So, yeah, so that's not allowed in the state of Oregon. Those are, so that would be considered a direct reuse, and that is allowed in some other states as a direct reuse. If we were in states that had a regulatory framework for that, that could be something that could be allowed, but the state of Oregon doesn't have as robust reuse rules in place right now that define some of those things and recognize the value of keeping that water in the basin and in the local water resources.
So what happened, what's being proposed or what's done in Prineville is the water just stays kind of more wetland surface and does not penetrate to the groundwater? Is that what?
It eventually does, but it goes through
Filter.
a zone that where there
Doesn't
is,
septic
that,
zone.
yeah, there's kind of a buffer between
filter.
where it where it starts to percolate and where the groundwater table is.
And for us, our soils aren't so,
They're tight.
Yeah.
They're
Fil-
tight.
you know,
Yeah,
able
yeah.
to filter that and so it just kind of just stays and plus when then it starts raining, all the old
Right.
soils are already full of water
Right.
anyway. I mean, the
Yeah.
And
soils are
that's
are
the
at
other
that
challenge, right?
capacity anyway, and so that's where we need this huge reservoir basically to hold the treated wastewater.
Mhm.
You're going
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
environmental cycle of what, 25 inches 30 inches of moisture a year. Prineville, that's like 6 or 7, right? So, why I'm so excited about Councilman Smallwood, this is the voice that is needed in Oregon, right? This is a resource. It's got to start to be viewed as a one water, because I do a lot of work in the Western United States, and almost every state around us has reuse, recharge legislation.
Mhm.
To your point, why can't we take our effluent, run it to a drinking water treatment plant and bring it right back through the city, right?
Mhm.
We have the technologies to do that, but
Exactly.
you're not allowed, what that's called direct potable reuse. Not allowed in our state yet.
Not only is it not allowed, but I don't think there's any legislation even on the table
I
in
don't think
regards
so.
to that, so.
I don't think so.
Want Take that
You know,
picture right
and I'll
now.
tell you what, the engineering,
Tyler, can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, sorry, I just said, not only is it not allowed in Oregon, but there's no legislation even prohibiting that.
Yeah,
so
but
it's no
somebody's
problem.
gotta start that conversation.
Yeah.
Somebody has to start that conversation.
well, the
You know?
engineers really mucked it up about 20 years ago when we come out with the toilet to tap logo.
Yeah.
Oh, we weren't thinking very good when we came up with that tagline, right? Because it turned the ick factor on, and the public just isn't acceptance of that, right? I'm with you. We need to start thinking like that. We need to start thinking about, if we don't want direct potable reuse, how about indirect? Why can't we recharge? The purple pipe program that you mentioned about, yeah. The problem with that is exorbitantly expensive, because you essentially got to go through your whole town and put in a dedicated irrigation system.
Which I totally understand, but you kind of get my point,
I
right? There's
do.
a renewable resource that
I
we're not
do.
capitalizing on. That's a needed resource, right?
And
And
it's
so, and by
become-
the way, to answer your question, there's several pieces of property in Clackamas County, I'm not saying Sandy, but over 100 acres that are right around $1 million. So,
But if it's not legal, it's not a viable option right now.
well, but here's the thing, right? And this is where my brain goes. Every project that I've been involved with at the council, and many people have been on council long enough that they've seen this, and Tyler can second this, and you guys do projects all over the world, right? So you see this. From the time that it's bid to the time it starts construction, to the time we get into it, the numbers increase dramatically, right? So this $250 million project is not gonna be $250 million. Not even close. It's gonna be double, maybe triple, maybe more. And so when I sit and I read things that are like, hey, if we don't get grants, if we don't get federal money, if we don't get, we're reliant on ratepayers. And I look at 13,000 people who live in this town, not all of whom are ratepayers, and there is no feasible way they can pay for it. So then in my mind, we have to come up with some other options.
So it's
And
like-
in this mentality of, well, this is our only option. Well, that's great. I mean, I just don't see how in 15 years, people in Sandy are gonna be able to pay $1,000 water bills. I don't see how that's possible. And I'm realizing I'm just throwing numbers out there, but I think you understand my point.
I think this is a great segue, unplanned segue, but great segue to a conversation Dick and I had earlier today about just talking high level around how the program budget has been developed.
Sure.
Certainly to your point, Councilor Smallwood, there have been projects in the past. Bell 362nd is one of those projects that became more expensive throughout the duration of that project.
Exponentially.
We've got other projects like Cedar Park where we didn't have that, it's totally within budget and on time.
It also
So
took 5 minutes to put together in comparison to what this project
Sure,
is gonna be.
the point being though, we've got examples of both. I talked to Dick a little bit earlier today and Heather about trying to articulate how this program budget has been developed and not necessarily in specific numbers, but just in context of good design estimates. And then it goes through a 30%, a 60%, a 90%. I'm going to stop because this is your area of expertise, but if you can fill in the gaps of what I just sort of started discussing, I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. Your points are well spoken, right? That escalation and time and price are absolutely related, right? So you have to start somewhere. with an idea and you put together looking backwards. So you're looking at what does pipe cost or what is a treatment plant rehab, and you put together a number. But there's a lot of things you don't know at that point, right? And so you will put contingencies in there. So if you start clear on the left-hand side of a graph, if you can imagine, times 0, you've got a kind of what we'll call a known cost based on parametrics looking backwards, and then you tack onto that a contingency to speak to those things, the unknown unknowns, right? And the combination of those becomes your total budget, right? And then as you advance to the right, going over time, you begin to answer questions. Classic here, right? In this project, we looked at the data that's available and said, well, if we just follow the letter of the law, it looks like the SDC fee to hook up to Gresham would be like 56 million. But as we get closer and closer and we have more and more conversations, that price is coming down, right? To what level? Don't know yet. Got to finish the negotiation, but it is coming down. But we build it with that full 56. We built it with the full capital cost. We put the contingency, and then we took that whole mess, to your point, and said, we got to escalate that over 7 years. So we moved that ahead. So we took that cost in $24 with the base cost plus the contingency plus all that. And then we took that and multiplied that 1.0375. So a 3.75% escalation year over year compounded every year to the midpoint of construction, which we think is mid-28. To help defray some of the concerns you have of these things don't get cheaper, they get more expensive, right? And you're absolutely right. And so in the planning stages, we're trying to set the expectation and the budget around that. Now the question becomes, as we advance, we want to see a downward trend on that, right? We know the fixed costs, the costs we know are going to grow, and we hope they grow within that contingency, and we hope the contingency shrinks. But the combination of those two has got a downward trend to it. My crystal ball isn't perfect. Heather's isn't perfect. AJ's isn't perfect. But we do vet these costs with the contracting community. We vet them on surrounding projects in the state. We look at the funding sources and what are the requirements of those, how much permitting, NEPA compliance, engineering, project management, construction itself. We look at the price of labor. All of us right now are sitting here swallowing hard because we've got an administration right now that's talking about a 30% tariff. We also watch the current administration, and I'm not trying to get political. I'm just telling you where the facts of life are right now when we come to cost estimating. We also got a challenge with Ukraine. All of the nickel in the world comes out of Ukraine. You want stainless steel? Why is everybody interested in Ukraine? Because they want the cobalt and nickel. Because all of our base materials come out of that, right? So when we start seeing rapid swings, we've seen this before, and we were just negotiating the fixed price for the $600 million expansion to the Columbia Boulevard when the last steel tariff come in, and Russia invaded Ukraine. In a span of about 3 months, stainless steel went from $600 a ton to $2,800 a ton in 6 months. These things will happen to us along the way, right? We have to be robust enough and agile enough that when those things happen, you pivot away from stainless steel and you pivot to plastics. If fuel prices go up and crude goes up, you pivot away from plastics and you pivot back to ferric materials. Having the flexibility, and when I talked about earlier in the thing about we have to make decisions quickly, we have to be efficient, we have to be agile. That's how we control the costs. But you're spot on. We have to always be vigilant about this. No matter what option we pick, we're all faced with, I haven't found a project yet in Standy that's affordable. None of them are.
No, I know. Tyler, in a non-perfect world where we get no money for this project, at point of completion, what will the water rates be in Sandy?
You're gonna have to give me a minute to pull up the
Mhm.
spreadsheet.
Water? or
I
sewer?
assume you mean
Sewer, sorry.
wastewater. Yep,
Mhm,
that's
wastewater.
where I was going. Hold on just a second.
You know, it's all the same.
One bill.
Well, I would also, counter that with, there are options that we have of kind of doing piecemeal construction. Not doing it all in one effort and then extending the loan periods that we have instead of, 20 to, we have, so it's not there's not a one size fits all answer to that, I think.
Well, and that's something we need the council to tell us, right? What you want, because this Irishman right here is going as fast as he can. I am pushing every moment of every day because I know when we're talking $100 million, next year that's $104 million. The year after that, it's $108 million, and it will get away from us. So 1, 2, we're under consent decree. And I love this town. I want this town to be open for business as quick as we can. Get out from underneath that consent decree. Because to your point, how do we get the rates down? Get more people paying the
No,
rates.
and I do agree with you there, especially commercial construction.
So I'm pushing maybe too hard, right? And so if you need me to slow the hell down, right, just say, Tally, slow down. But I am like every day on these two guys and her, every day going faster, faster, faster. We've got to get this thing to a point that we can control these costs. Because we're pretty vulnerable right now. And we add another year to this on 250 million at 4%. We just add 10 million to the budget.
But I really like your question, Lori, because I was asking the same question to them. And what I asked them to kind of start working on are, here's all the money we have, and here's the money we need. And here's the options of getting it or not getting it. And here are the options of, again, tweaking the payment schedule to making the renegotiating something with Gresham on the SDCs to be over a longer period of time. So looking at options for how we both get the funding and then pay it back in a way that then kind of shows us what those rates could be with those different options.
Still need to know what those costs are.
Yeah, so was that December when we did the rate increase? And in that staff report, I presented it, the next 8 or 10 years of proposed rate increases as outlined in the rate model. So using that same spreadsheet and baseline of assumptions.
And that's factoring in a certain amount of growth as well, correct?
Correct, it's a 2.1% annual growth. In 2034, the wastewater rate would be, for the average customer, $275.20 a month.
Up from,
Today, the average customer is $98.11.
It's a huge bite.
and that's factored for
I know.
inflation or not?
That's what
factored for
concerns me.
inflation?
Yeah, that includes all the inflationary components that Dick has just talked about. It includes inflationary
slightly
components for
less.
staffing, for,
It'd be slightly less if we took out regular inflation
someone
costs.
Yeah.
To reflect, today's dollar salaries paying that.
yeah, and what we're trying to do is paint, a
Oh, please do.
robust financial picture in a spreadsheet and trying to factor in all those costs so that I don't come back with a surprise. It's not X%, it's actually Y%. So yes, we have all those inflationary components built in.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you may not know this, but I worked for a wastewater company for 1 year as a consultant. So I don't really know wastewater at all, but in that, I heard a story about a small town in California that had wastewater issues, that didn't have the money to fund it. And they ended up putting a bag of something every so many hours into the treatment facility to convert the water and save the county, hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, mind you, that was California, so I'm sure the rules are even more, stringent. And I'm sure I only know just a small piece of the story. But is there not a magic bag that Sandy can use to dump into our plant to help with water instead of having to build more infrastructure?
Goes back to our original point. it's not the treatment or the water quality, it's the volume and where do we go with it?
So even if you did all of the treatment and made it good, it'd have no place to go.
Yes.
It could be melted glacier ice, and we
Yeah.
could still not discharge any more than what our permit allows us to discharge today.
I mean, that's important to know, right?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, so, and maybe this is if, I don't know wastewater at all, I'm not gonna pretend I do. So for cities that don't live next to rivers,
Mhm.
what do they do?
Most of them are very rural, right? So they have lagoons. And they use evaporation as one part of it. Land application for part of it. But usually they're very small. And so their volumes are pretty small. And they're usually in rural parts. You know, Klamath Falls right now, you've probably read about them. They're in a world of hurt, right? They have nowhere to go. They can't put the water in the Klamath River. They can't land apply. They want to use it for irrigation. They're disallowed from that. They're in a tough spot. Because they don't have a nearby Gresham to get to.
Will be under consent decree.
Not yet, but they will be.
The problem is, I think we're looking for this golden goose that just doesn't exist, right? And the reality of it is, we're bound not only by a small stream, right? But we're also bound by our groundwater and then our state regulations, right?
Yep.
So one of those, I mean, could potentially fix the other
And the consent decree.
in the consent decree. But I'm just saying, like, even without the consent decree, even if we didn't have that over our head, we're still not gonna be able to do what we're wanting. So short of all of a sudden, this state changing its philosophy towards environmental protection. This, if I'm under the understanding, this is the best feasible option. Am I not? Because we have explored all of this, like the direction we're going. Because we have explored that, like, I mean, and I agree, I thought Prineville was great. Everyone seems to forget Eugene. Eugene has a cottonwood farm, right? And they're selling the natural gas, even though they're banning it in their construction, which was really ironic. But the point is, there's lots of cool, but they also aren't insanity. And that's just the reality of the
Well,
world we live in.
But we as a body have got to look at the best options and know what the best potential options are. We're making decisions for
Right.
every resident in this town,
And
so.
But you have a list of options.
that have been explored.
So the issue is we have experts we've hired, paid a lot of money for, giving us their best expert opinion. And we either accept it or we look for more experts. I mean, that's where we're at.
The other piece is
We're either buy into it or we don't.
we're under a financial debt. Not only are costs going up for the actual project, but without any growth too. We're capped at our property values. So the cities, this cost for our city workers is going to increase. Without bringing in that additional revenue there, we're being pinched from both ends. The compression is getting us within the city. And it will only continue to grow if we're not allowed to grow. Then you have all the other issues, like, unfortunately, I think if I would be 1000% on your side. If I felt like we had 20 years to explore this problem and really figure it out and dive deep and do that, but unfortunately. For our city workers and our community, we're also under the compression that's gonna come with no growth. And the cap that we have. We have to keep that in mind as well.
Well, you were gonna say something when he said, is this the best option? You were gonna say something.
Yeah, because I want to pull one more thread on the wetlands treatment, right? So let's assume we can't find 200 acres, but let's assume it's 10 miles away.
Mhm.
And we gotta pay $2 million for it or $5 million, pick a number, right? You still have to reinvest in your plant, right? You can't just send them raw sewage, right? So you have to put a significant upgrade to your plant. And then you've got to build 10 miles of pipe. Well, that's kind of what we're looking at going to Gresham.
That's fair.
We're building 10
That's
miles of
fair.
pipe,
Yep.
right? Without having the sunk cost of rebuilding an asset for the community and then continuing to have to upgrade that asset every 20 years, right?
Or when the standards change.
Yeah, and so,
And the operational costs of running said.
yeah, so is it the best option? I'm not real, I can't stand here and say, oh, my God, because it's $200 million on a community of 13,000 people. It doesn't make sense. I am so with you on that. But it is an option that we don't have to rely on changing the state regulations. It is an option that doesn't mean we've got to get a new discharge to the Sandy River and the challenges that that's going to bring. Cost wise, it's about the same, right? Maybe a little less if we can get some of these costs down like the SDCs, and it's implementable. I can stand here, hand over my heart and say, if this is where you want to go, we can get you there in a time frame. When you say, we want to go to the Sandy River, man, I'll tell you what, I don't know when to get you there, right? Because I don't know how long that process is going to be out of the control of this room. When we go to change state regulations, I don't know how long that's going to take to do that because it's out of the control of this room. If we say we're going to Gresham, that's pretty much, we're all in this together now. Now we can get there, right? Because it's something we all know how to do with a neighbor that we know who appears to this point be willing to be a partner with us, right? So is it the best option? No, the best option would be affordable. But we can't find that. We have searched and searched, and I was telling Tyler today, I went all the way back, started reading facility plans back in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and 2010s, because what is every 10 years you have to do one of these things? And every 10 years for the last 40 or 50 years, this question has been brought up in those facility plans. What do we do? What is the long-term solution for Sandy? Because Pickle Creek is not the final solution. And man, there's been a whole maturation of ideas that have been vetted out over time. Going to Gresham was mentioned in 1983 or 5 or something, right? So it's been a concept that's been in the making for a long time. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I say fortunately, because the leadership I see here is a leadership that's going to say, ha, we're gonna fix it, because we just can't keep dodging the bullet, right? We can't anymore. DOJ and EPA have stepped in and said, you gotta fix it. If you wanna grow, you gotta fix it. So it takes a lot of leadership and courage just to weigh into that. I am so with you, Council.
I appreciate you answering my questions.
Anytime, man, anytime. You keep bringing them.
Yeah, for me, what helps a little bit is the fact that, you know, even if you were to go to the Sandy River or whatever, those options still require the city of Sandy, you know, in 30, 40 years to basically rebuild those plants again at whatever the price is at that point. And maybe those other options will be, you know, feasible or something like that, but it's still kind of putting the costs of all that on a very small town. And that's where I do appreciate the fact that going with these regional solutions where whatever has to happen in 30 or 40 years for Gresham, you know, there's going to be 250,000 people plus paying for that rather than 15,000.
Yep.
So, but you know, your point about, you know, what if we don't get any funding? I think we're getting pretty good feedback from folks on getting some funding. So that's not so much federal, but definitely state folks. I think we've got folks' attention, but it is still a kind of a crapshoot. So until we find out more.
And, you know, to that point, Mayor, part of this funding conversation is ongoing. We don't know exactly what the connection fee to Gresham will be, and we don't know what the payment terms of that will be. You know, in our rate model, that's a lump sum payment. Maybe they're willing to play ball and it's a 20-year payment, right? Maybe it's a no interest loan, or maybe it's a very low interest loan. So there's still a lot of things that we don't have good answers to, and we won't have good answers to for 8, 9, 10 more months. Well, less than 10 now because we're in March, but 8 months as we, you know, finish those studies that you all just approved the change orders for last week to do the capacity analysis and the preliminary pipe alignment. We have the MOU in place with City of Gresham that at least establishes that they're a willing partner to have these conversations with and interested in continuing the conversations. We'll craft that IGA later this year as we get the results of these other studies that we're doing, and that will help us learn exactly what that connection fee will be and potentially what payment terms could look like with that. So I guess all that to say.
Yeah.
Funding is still a difficult piece to really nail down right now because we don't know when some of these big dollar costs are going to hit. And it could be a one-time fee, it could be stretched out over many, many years. And so that's also going to play into what the rate model looks like and what future utility rates look like. You know, additionally, what state funding we can get and if we can get some federal funding, but all of that is just going to be continued annual revisions to our rate model to hone in on exactly what the true impact is. Right now, we just got a snapshot trying to look into a crystal ball for what the next 8 years look like, and that's really difficult to do, and it isn't a great story that we're selling, right? But as we continue to advance in this project, we'll have better information to share and a better
Well, I'd
picture
like to
look
even
at.
be more aggressive about it, Tyler, and just kind of start, running these models of like, if we get, $20 million or, and we get, and then what happens if we do a 20-year payback on the SDCs or so. Let's start running some of these, then our rates would be X,
Yeah.
just so that we have something to negotiate with. Like, we're trying to get our rates down to here,
Yeah.
affordable. And so in order to do that, here's how much money we have to have, and here's how much other agreements we have to have in place with Gresham and stuff. So I'd like to be a little bit more aggressive and kind of, what do you call that?
Proactive.
Proactive, but also, kind of crystal
Transparent.
crystal ball, what the options are, given different inputs. It's just it's just a spreadsheet type thing to plug in different numbers and see what.
Well, I think that's the ask, right? The hand across the aisle ask right now to help this from the council and the mayor. Embed yourself with Gresham, council to council, mayor to mayor, city manager, engineering to engineering, ops to ops. Because there's gonna be a discussion that has to take place in September, October, November, and December that sets the future of both communities for hopefully a very long time, right? Let's build that on trust and respect. And the only way I know how to do that is zipper up with people, right? You got to be able to have those communications, those intentional one-on-ones about, hey, what are you worried about? This is what I'm worried about. How do we get a solution that works for both of our communities? So that's an ask, I think, because Heather and I don't have any political capital to spend, right? We're engineers. We don't have friends, right? You all do. So help us bridge that gap, bridge that communication gap, and then help us with the construction funding, because you're right. We have enough funding in place right now to get through the IGA, get the right of way, get the pipeline design, get the packages bid ready. Shovel ready, you always hear that, right? Where we're gonna stop is when we don't have that first 15 million, so we can let that first 3 miles of pipe bid, right? And build this, that's the ask. At least for me, I'm speaking for you a lot tonight, I'm sorry, but that's the ask, because we can help, but we don't have the political might that you all do as leaders of your community, right? So that would be the help, right? Because if we can come through these capacity analysis, we have this thing, we've trued up our numbers, we've got this SD thing, and you guys have already zippered up the IGA. You know how you're going to handle operations, you know how you're going to handle future increases, you know how you're going to handle future capital. What is the year-over-year escalation on O&M, right? What happens if PFAS becomes a regulated contaminant in your biosolids? Whatever those things are, if you can have that worked out amongst the two governing bodies to where this is just put the numbers in and it's before you for approval, that will save us months, right? So, sorry for being all wide-eyed there, but we need help. We can't do this. Nobody can do this alone. Nobody. We gotta be united as a unit, right? It's a big ask. And we need to get our community. We cannot let our community not know what we're doing or how we're doing or what we're struggling with or what we're wrestling with, right? Because they'll help us. This is their town. They love it just as much as we do. So there you go. I looked up, I just seen it. Sorry.
Are there other questions, especially from you?
In your expertise in dealing with various groups of people.
Sure.
It's really hard getting feedback, mainly social media criticism on what we're doing. The understanding that we're out of choices. It's this or it's, I don't even know. Does Sandy just stop everything? Do we not have water? I don't think it's understood or absorbed, that this is where we are and we all pay the same bills. And we're not just flying by the seat of our pants, hoping that this fixes it for whatever it is. This is where we are. This is all we have. If the state regulations were better, we could look at some of these other things, and it sounds like we have for 40 or 50 years. I think we have to come together up here, go the direction we need to go to get this done long-term. But I would feel better if people understood also that it sucks now. Nobody wants to hire bills, but this is what we have to do to keep Sandy running. And so I mean, I don't like paying the water bills either. They're higher. But I like to take a shower. And so I think that's where I get wide-eyed, where I'm like, gosh, this is a hard sell. But it's also a hard situation to be in. And there's no answer. So.
Can I ask one question you can answer to? Maybe. I know it's a big maybe, but it's the other side of it. It's development that wants to come into Sandy, that wants to build. They can't right now. All of these ideas, there's a track that we follow that's a lot of variability to it. When can we safely say we'll be back in these chambers, not talking about wastewater and rates, because it's all finished, it's done, and it's over. And I know you don't control any of that stuff. I mean, but is it 6 years? Is it 8 years? Is it really 10 years or 12 years? Because I think that's what at least people who have asked me, they want to know. And there's a presumption that it's 2 or 3 years, and that's not true. That's not true. So do you have an idea for that, for the timeline?
I do. My number was 10 years. And my man here said, do it again. That don't fly.
I think I said move it to the left. Move it on the chart and move it to the left.
So we've got a strategy now to have it pretty well wrapped up by 2030.
2030. Because the other side of that is, in order to help us offset rates, we have to grow.
That's
So we
right.
need development to resume. So, and that's all dependent upon the completion of this project.
And we have
that's-
estimated 18 months for the extra 190 ERUs.
Right, for the next phase of it, right? I'm talking
Right.
about,
Which is
we're not
nothing.
worried about that anymore, right?
Well, I mean, that could,
No, it's not nothing, but there's nothing beyond that
right,
right now.
oh,
either.
yeah, I know.
Right.
Hence my plea. Zip her up with Gresham. Cause that's the one thing that'll kick this can down the road, right? Because we can't go hire engineers and start buying right away for a pipe if we don't have that IGA, right? Again, don't control that. Need help there. We got enough to get us to design documents ready to bid. But we gotta get money to pay the contractors to buy the pipe to put it in the ground and build the pump station, right? Those are the two things when he said, move it left, I was, Tyler, and he's like, move it to the left, right? And that's where the pinch points are, the critical path for getting there. So I want to be there with you when we tell everybody, hey, we got a plan, it's underway, and we're open for business. That will be a grand day, right? But we can't quite say that out loud yet until we get that IGA and we get a better line on the, what is it, 100 million we need for construction, something like that. That's where we need to all weigh into this, right? Get us that IGA, because you guys can bring all sorts of relationships that we can get you the data, but we can't bring those relationships.
mean, the other piece to that, or the portion of that answer is that, we're gonna run some of these things concurrently and take a little bit more risk there. For example, we're doing the capacity analysis and the preliminary pipeline alignment at the same time. I don't think this is likely, but the analysis of Gresham's capacity could come back and say, nope, we can't take you long term. And that's a possibility, right? It's not a high likelihood, but that is a possibility. But we also just shaved 6 months off of this timeline by running them at the same time. So we're looking at where can we run things in tandem so that we can shave, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months off. And every time we do that, that takes another year off the project. And it's a year sooner that we're able to grow or accept new land use applications or whatever it is, so.
And may save us 10 million bucks, right? Because of escalation, inflation right now is brutal.
Are there any other comments, questions?
No, appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you for being patient with us.
No? No.
I really like the idea of maybe reaching out to Gresham Council. I was just looking through who's on there, because to be honest, I don't know. I knew one of them, she didn't get reelected, so now I'm in the dark again. But I just browsing through them, it's kind of interesting because you find they have a bio on each one of them. And you go, oh, there's something I can relate to on that one or this one. So I just shared with Lindy too. There's one that shares historical things as well. There's a connection to make to build. So I'm happy to explore one or two.
We're gonna be doing that, and part of that is just that whole, this communications plan that we're putting together pretty quickly here.
But even before we start talking about sewer, I'm just talking about making a connection.
Right.
Yeah, I've reached out to Sue. I know her fairly well, so.
Cool. So that's what I was thinking. It's something that, it's kind of a hit up the head. Every now and then you're just sitting around doing your job and somebody hits you with 2x4 in the head. I feel like you just did.
Waiting.
But it's good. So,
Make sure we're all
yeah.
kind of telling the same,
Not tipping the message out too
Right.
much. At this point, it's
Yeah.
just, let's
Oh,
make
yeah,
a
just
connection.
build relationships, yeah. No, I've reached out to Mayor Stovall. I saw him on Saturday. and
Yeah,
Chatted with them. Yeah, so it's,
well, unless somebody tells me to do something like that, I won't. So
Yeah.
this is good. I needed the 2x4.
we should kind of plan a little bit of a get together.
Certainly, we can talk more about that,
Yeah, okay.
how to unveil that plan, but I can certainly reach out to Gresham folks
Okay.
and
As
start
soon as the
building that bridge.
mosquitoes in the swamp were drained in the skate park, and we have a sunny day, maybe we should have them out.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other?
I just had a question. Could you do something like, I don't know if they still do Clackamas City's dinners, do they do those
Yep,
still?
we do that.
Maybe do some sort of a one-off or two-off, they host one, you host one, and have a
Yeah.
Gresham, Sandy, sister city kind of
Definitely,
social thing where you can
right.
crack the ice.
Yeah. Thank you.
We get
Thank you.
very hung up on boundary lines of the county and often forget that we do have neighbors to the west of us that are in a different county, but
Right.
in very
We-
close proximity and
yeah.
share a lot of the same
Close
problems
friends.
and.
Nothing like the need to flush a toilet, bring you together.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't go to.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all the information.
Thank you.
It's really helpful to kind of help us frame our options and next steps. Thank you. All right. Let's back in before 7:15, please, to start with the meeting. 7:19. Let's start with the section.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jeff, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor, Counselor Mayton.
Present.
Counselor Smallwood.
Here.
Counselor Sheldon. Here. Counselor Ramsayer.
Here.
Counselor Hanley.
Here.
Counselor Hookinson.
Here.
And Mayor Walker.
Here. Thank you. Okay, our agenda that we have here is start off with some public comment. And then I don't know, do we have anybody?
Not today, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Do we have any follow-up from before?
We do not, no
Okay,
public
very
comment
good.
was provided last meeting.
And then our consent agenda just has our meeting minutes on it. Old business, we have looking at the council goals, which I guess, I hope everybody's had a chance to just look at. And the new business is the Mount Hood Community College Bond support vote on a resolution for that or not. We will be holding a public hearing for our Urban Renewal Agency Board modification and updating our public contracting rules. Lastly, we'll have the full faith and credit obligation to fund water capital projects. That's resolution 2025-06, and that'll be, and then report from the city manager and committee council reports and staff updates. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, let's go ahead and get started on the consent agenda. Does anybody have a motion on the consent agenda passing the meeting minutes?
I move that we approve the city council minutes from February 18th, 2025.
I will second that motion.
Oh, we have a motion by Councillor Hokinson and a second from Councillor Kemp Ramsayer to pass the city council meetings. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna abstain because I
Oh,
wasn't.
that's right, okay. Okay, Councillor Sheldon abstained. Motion passes. Old business, everybody had a chance to look through the city council goals? I thought you captured them very well.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
really
you for capturing them very well, Jeff.
Okay, good job.
note
guys.
I don't remember giving them to you that succinct.
There was a lot of synthesizing that goes into that,
Yeah.
and Jeff certainly takes the
Yeah.
lead on consolidating all that information. I guess if I could just briefly give a staff update on that, Mayor. Obviously, you all were in attendance on February 1st for goal setting. Had a great conversation around all the different departments and functions of the city. The goals are attached in the latest and greatest format that we've put together. So the decision before you this evening is to have a discussion and make sure that that captures everything as the council desires. And either adopt as written. If there's some minor amendments, we could adopt them as revised or as amended. Or if you think there's further conversation that needs to be had, we could bring this back the upcoming council meeting to adopt at that point. But really, I'll turn it over to you all to discuss if there's revisions that need to be made or any questions you have.
Well, what I'd like to do is just kind of zip through the different departments and the goals for that and see if there's any comments. And then I guess when we get through that, if there's anything major that we can't incorporate, we'll schedule another go round. But the first item on the goals was police. Did anybody have any additional additions to those goals or any changes to what's there? Okay, how about library? Okay, Sandy Net? Transit? Parks and Rec? I had one for Parks and Rec, of course. The only thing I was gonna add to that is, what's the name of our, is it community services position? What's that? Outreach, what's
The new
Yeah.
position, community services officer.
Okay, right. So I said, work with the new community services position to ensure that parks are being patrolled regularly and park regulations enforced. Just so that we have, an understanding of, if there's new homeless camps out there.
Is that part of the job description for that position?
What's
Is that
that?
part of the job description for that
Uh-huh.
position? It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrol different areas.
Mayor, would you mind repeating that just to make sure?
Work with new community services position to ensure that parks are being patrolled regularly and park regulations enforced.
If I may, Mayor, I think maybe removing the term new just to encapsulate the
Uh-huh.
council's desire
Yeah,
for
got it.
code enforcement.
Okay, work with
in parks.
community services position to ensure that parks are being patrolled regularly and park regulations enforced.
Is that position, just out of curiosity, is that position falling under community service or police?
It's housed in the police department, so it's same job description as code enforcement or community services officer Moody. So all housed under the police budget, but it's distinct job description.
But with focus on the homeless and much
Yeah.
of the homeless spots we have.
Correct.
You know, and we
Yeah.
have a lot of different places, but obviously the parks and trails come up regularly.
And addressing homelessness is in that general community services officer job description. That task will be the focus of this new position, although both will still handle it depending on workload and day of the week and things like that.
Any other changes to Parks and Rec? Okay, the next is development services. I just kind of highlighted that Pleasant Street master plan with minimal reliance on consulting services. Seems like the last time we had that presented to us, there was a lot of, you know, it was a huge amount of money. And there was seemed to be not total agreement on how much emphasis to put on it. So I'm not quite sure what all that means when we say complete the master plan.
Does that mean approve? Or just revisit it and decide whether we want to approve it? Because I'm more inclined for the latter.
Yeah, I would agree with
And then we
that.
could modify complete to revisit.
That's what I was trying to capture. So yeah, we should revisit it. Okay.
Okay. The other thing I added in here was just one word of under the next one, apply for ODOT Safe Routes to School grant. And I think it said with the cooperation of the Oregon Trail School District. I would like to see them put a little bit of money in the game, just as far as, you know, if that, I mean, it's something that really benefits their schools. It doesn't have to be a lot, but some sort of a
So are
financial.
you adding a word to the word cooperate or trying to put a stronger word than cooperate?
Well, I just put
Partly-
financial cooperation is kind of what I.
Financial cooperation, okay, that, I missed
Again, it
that.
doesn't have to be a huge amount, but basically any match to our school grant and AJ's gone, but my understanding is that there is a fairly healthy match required, at least 30% or something.
I don't know the percent offhand, but
Yeah.
I think it's in that
Yeah, in
realm.
that park. And so that comes out of our street fund. So, which is already, you know,
So we can say, so you're just proposing that we add, remove the and replace it with financial cooperation.
yeah.
Does anybody on this board know, when does the school district start their financial budgeting?
I used to know, because I was on that committee.
Was I? And you know where I'm going, like, that would be a conversation for when they're budgeting.
I think it's the same time frame. I think they
As ours?
start the same as ours.
Really, yeah.
That would be the best time to have those conversations, is while they're creating their budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I would also imagine, you know, consulting with them on, you know, what do they see as the highest priority for the safe routes to school options? You know, I don't have a, you know, obviously, we're not gonna do a bunch of them, so which, you know, if just getting their vote on that, especially if they're gonna help pay a little bit for it, would be.
Could we modify that to say, you know, apply for their grant with the cooperation, including financial
Sure.
contribution
Mhm.
from the Oregon OTSD?
Sure.
Because that way you've got the cooperation work
Mhm.
together, plus only.
Okay.
I would assume they still have a grant writer on staff, even if Julie's retired, I would assume they have somebody.
I have a question about the code enforcement abatement fund. Would that count for like derelict RVs and stuff like that as well?
Yep.
Yeah. It really has helped with the, you know, with the liens that we ended up putting, you know, unfortunately, sadly, you know, not like we want to go there, but that did then provide us some funding to go ahead and get some, you know, have some money to take care of some immediate issues. So
And really, oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
You know, the intent, at least at the staff level, is we're gonna have to shell out some money in advance, right, to abate some of these properties, but we lien the property. we get repaid either at the sale of that property, or we have a good owner like we've had recently who comes in and pays that lien off. And then you just keep reinvesting those funds. So it's not, you know, $50,000 every biennium. It's $50,000 one time, and it's a
Right.
cyclical replenishment of the funds as things get paid off.
But it gives us the option of, you know, being able to take immediate
And
action.
keeps us from
Yeah.
turning into Portland with cars everywhere.
Well,
And-
sorry, that's what I was gonna ask is, I understand the property abate, that's why I was wondering why it was under development services, because I understand the property abatement piece in that. But I'm talking more about, you know, if like a certain street needed
Yeah.
RVs towed off of it to clean it up. You know, if it would fall under that, and there would be no liens to recoup our costs. and stuff.
Correct. So there are gonna be some that there's not a property to lien, and there's just gonna be cost. We've seen that a couple times with some derelict RVs before. It landed in development services, mostly because what the topic at hand that we've discussed a lot in the past has been related to the code enforcement officer position and the liens that they're placing on properties. From an implementation standpoint, this certainly wouldn't be restricted to just something that Chris and Kelly's team are handling. This would be a holistic approach to abating nuisance things within town. Most of them are on private properties or near private property, and we can tag the owner, and so that becomes a little easier, but certainly this would be, in my view, you know, eligible for the random RV that gets dumped somewhere that needs to be abated.
I just wanted to make sure it was.
Yeah.
Any
available
changes
for
that you want to see
outside
to it?
development services. I just don't know, I wanted to make sure that it was a service available for also outside of development services.
Yeah.
That's all.
Public Works? And wastewater? Streets? Stormwater?
When it comes to streets, I'm sorry, when did we, I should know this off the top of my head, did we actually finish our SDC conversation around our transportation fund?
Yes, for transportation SDCs, those were revised and a new, the methodology was updated as well as the rate increased. 9,200 now, I believe, 92 and some change. It was nearly doubling of the existing SDC. And so that is in effect now, the new rate.
Is there any SDCs that we didn't do? Because I feel like we didn't get them all.
Water and wastewater, you guys received a presentation.
Those here,
Is that November?
Yeah, that's the 90 days.
And then we had to do a 90-day notice requirement. We plan on bringing back the public hearing for adoption of that methodology at the next council meeting, March 17th, and then we can have a conversation on where you actually want to set the rate. So we'll, in theory, adopt methodology, which sets the maximum amount you can charge, and then we can have the conversation on where you want to actually set it between where it is currently and what's maximum defensible. So right around the corner.
Perfect.
I'm not quite sure where all the 88, how many 88 ramps do we have along Highway 211? That doesn't seem like a very walkable route anyway. I mean,
I wish AJ was here.
we have the 88
Yeah.
We don't
ramps.
have any ADA ramps really, do we?
We have to install ADA ramps
Yes.
on 211.
How many?
Let me pull that up really quick. I
Oh,
think I have it here in an email. So we have until December 31st, 2027. And there's 14 ramps that
Oh, merciful
require
heavens.
mediation. So part of the funding mechanism for that was when we accepted the jurisdictional transfer from ODOT, they gave us $500,000 to do those ADA improvements. That's where the funding will be coming from, but we
So
need to
where
put
did
it
that
out to
go?
bid and
Where did it go?
Where'd the 500,000 go?
in the street fund. It's
That we spent on Bill?
no, there's
No.
a fund balance remaining of
It's still there.
500,000.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All the more reason why the
So we're
ASRD
gonna
was such
put
an
an
important
ADA
component.
I'm just gonna get this straight. We're gonna, like Councilor Henley was saying, on Bornstead, we're gonna put an ADA ramp so that they come up that beautiful sidewalk right onto the highway with no sidewalk, no walking space, no nothing, where they'll die if they go down there in a wheelchair.
I'm not going
Okay,
to
never
answer a
mind,
specific
never mind.
intersection
That's
question because I don't know all
beyond the
14
scope of the goal.
locations, but I can certainly send the IGA out and highlight which ramps need to be installed. So that
Another,
you're all
another
aware of it.
conversation.
okay. Stormwater, any changes to stormwater? going back to the streets, I do like the idea about that. Pavement management plan and getting that on the website so people can access when their potholes are gonna get patched. City governance.
What's this Heritage Advisory Board thing?
Huh. That first one, I think Lindy
No, I just see.
got some plans about how to pursue that, so we'll look. And Don, I'm sure you're gonna work on that third one.
Yep.
And the fifth one is going before you later this evening.
Yep.
Off to a good start.
Off to a good start, yeah.
Yeah. And then, lastly, city operations. Any changes proposed for that?
I had something on the first bullet.
Sure.
Supplement staff capacity to implement the economic development strategic plan in pursuit of more living wage jobs. And then a strong local economy and growing local businesses. We're supporting local business growth, sorry.
Did you get that, Deb?
You read it back to us?
Would you say it one more time, please, for me? So I want to make sure I get it exactly right.
So the supplement of staff of capacity to implement the economic development strategic plan in pursuit of more
Got it?
living wage jobs. You could use create, if you wanted to, I guess, and then get rid of the and let it say comma, a strong local economy. And then I would say, and supporting local business growth. Brings it into Sandy.
And I assume that the supplement staff capacity, that could just be hiring consultants.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Any other comments on the other points? Okay. All right, well,
To
all right,
approve
is this
them?
something that we're able to adopt tonight with those changes? Anybody feel otherwise? No? Great, well, I think you guys did a great job of getting a lot of
Do we need a motion?
input. Yes, we do, huh?
I need the last one.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we approve the city council goals 2025-27 draft as gone through and adjusted this evening.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Counselor Mayton and a second by Counselor Hokinson to adopt the 2025-27 goals as amended to move forward. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Great,
Thank you, Council.
thanks.
Thank you.
Help.
I don't know how you distilled that out of our 8 hours. but well done.
I will say, as my first goal setting in the city manager role, I really appreciated the feedback and the conversations that we had. I know there was a lot of information that we threw at you all, and I appreciate listening to all of our talking and reading materials, and then providing really good direction for us to adopt and then incorporate into the budget. So looking forward to the next step of that process and getting a budget document before you that incorporates a way to fund many of those goals.
Did you get, positive feedback from the staff, especially department heads?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, some questions around what we're gonna do, because we've done it different ways in the past, right? There was like the more dog and pony show approach where there was lots of presentations, and I know that can provide a lot of value for some of you. I think that, the other direction that we could have gone is really totally just Q&A, and then we kind of landed somewhere in the middle where there was no presentation, but they came up and kind of defended whatever the topic at hand was and answered questions. And so I think it overall,
Yeah.
But well.
It's a good process.
I think we can all agree we don't love a Saturday all day session, but other than that, I didn't hear any negative feedback, so.
Okay, all right, next item is the report on the potential support for the Mount Hood Community College bond. So I happened to visit, they invited me to come visit on Friday, and it'd been scheduled a month and a half ago or so, and that's when it snowed, and so we canceled, but I was able to go out there Friday and was really impressed with how much programs that they offer. I got a tour of the surgical residents, surgical assistant program and the dental hygienist program. I was thrilled to see that, and I didn't know this, that you can go get, dental exams for free, basically, Tuesdays and Thursdays at Mount Hood Community College. They have like 20, wonderful, really nice, dental chairs with all the equipment and x-rays, ability to take x-rays and all that. So, I was quite impressed, and I know they're doing, trying to really focus on those career-ready, associate degrees and all that. And those people in those programs are making, $80,000 plus a year. So they're, good paying jobs. And so they did ask if the city councilors would be willing to, support the bond. And, I felt, that they've tried to pass it, I guess, twice before. And they've got, I believe, $31 million is the proposal. They've got over 27,000 students, 120 professional programs. They're going after $131 million bond that would end up costing district taxpayers 25 cents per thousand of assessed value. And it's estimated to cost the over 200,000 district residents $5 per month. So I felt like that was something, again, that we could at least put to a vote and see if there was support. The recommendation that I would make is to authorize the mayor to sign resolution 2025-09 stating the Sandy City Council is in support of the $131 million Mount Hood Community College bond on the May 2025 ballot. Let's have some discussion. What are your thoughts?
I got a question for you. I'm the one, I asked them for that bond because I want to read it. And I have a daughter that went there and graduated early, so I do support them. But I was curious, do we know how many students today are from Sandy or from our area of that 27,000? Because I'm pressed to support increasing assessed value rates to our citizens. If we have 5,000 students, or 2,000 students or 500 students. And so I want to get a better understanding of that. And I think she mentioned it, but I couldn't find it in my notes. So does anybody know?
I think it's in the slides.
I thought it was mentioned.
The slides say about 600.
About 600.
Yeah. That's it, it works in such a strange kind of, I don't even know what word I want to use, but we're in Clackamas County. But we're in Mount Hood Community College, which is not Multnomah County's district. So, yeah.
Does that 600, do we know if that includes the the high school dual credit program? It's on.
I would assume.
Oh, I did look at that today.
Looks like
Yeah.
it's got up.
Okay, it's 176 dual enrolled and 338 students.
Having done service projects out there to try to paint and maintain some of those facilities out there in years past. They need this desperately. And I'm highly supportive of it. I know there's a lot of money and rates and everything else but this is one that helps us, my own families, my own kids, a couple of them have participated there in high school or post high school. I think this is just something, this is a really good investment for us. So I highly support it.
Are there any downsides to supporting it?
Well, I'm always a little, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm gonna vote no. I'm gonna be hard pressed to vote for who's gonna raise taxes. I'm doing my taxes right now and I give a lot of my money to governments. And I know a lot of people feel that way. My thing is that government, every time they need more money, they just go back to the taxpayer and say, give us more money. What I would like to see with some of these things is, where are you trying to conserve money? Where are you utilizing that money? How are you utilizing your resources to the best of your ability? Then show me maybe where you need, that increase. But I always feel like what government does, and we do it even here at council, we need more money, we just go to the taxpayer and ask for more. So, yeah, I'm gonna struggle even with the school bond out here or anything else, so.
Well, the bonds are the funding mechanism for these kinds of projects.
Totally understand.
And I think, and I appreciate the ability you have to say no. I'll say that saying no to something like this is saying, you know what, I don't want to pay for my oil change, so I'll just pay for a new car sooner or later. And I think, to me, that's less responsible than taking the high road and saying no for a tax increase.
As a guy who's in the
Rethink
service
that.
business, that's not true.
That's not true at all.
That's not true. That's not true.
What's not true?
That's like not paying for an oil change to keep your car running newer longer. That's not even close. And I'm not advocating for a yes or no, but that's not a good comparison.
I'm sorry, what would make it a more, if you need a better analogy, pick your own analogy.
Well,
You just said the oil change. I said that doesn't solve it for me. That's all I'm saying. That doesn't make sense. To me,
I mean,
that didn't make sense.
to me, the analogy, I guess that I'm using when I say that government just has a tendency, and that it's all government, right? It's kind of how this country runs right now. It's government uses the resources that they have, and then they go back out to the taxpayer and they ask for more money. Well, I don't, and you don't either. I don't get to go to my boss every year. You know what? My cost of living is going up. I need more money. That's not how things work. So, you know, I mean, I would like to see where, when it comes to things like this, like, how are you utilizing those tax dollars? I'm not saying that they don't necessarily need it, but it's not my,
It's completely available for you to go look at. I mean, their budgets are
Sure. I haven't
publicly available.
dove into their budget, you know.
They showed me, and I was looking in the presentation here that they gave last meeting. Their budget showed that the primary bulk of their income is from grants every year. The next level down was state funding. The next level down below that was tuition, which, you know, told me that they have made, you know, they've tried to keep tuition affordable for folks. I do see that, you know, the last time they passed a bond was 1974, so I don't feel like they've been coming to, you know, they have tried last, you know, twice already and were denied, so.
It's a question of how you fund capital projects, right? So in the case of our sewer system, there were decisions made to not fund incremental improvements, upgrades, maintenance, and things that were deferred that led us to a situation of more non-compliance and ultimately some very expensive situations we're in today. In Mount Hood's Community College case, these facilities were paid for by bonds, by an investment, and they're now running the risk of their value could go to zero if not properly maintained over time. They need to be maintained. And the way all government in Oregon entities fund themselves is they don't account for the cost of ongoing maintenance and repair. Maintenance, short-term maintenance, yes, but they don't account for replacement cost and they don't account well for large capital expenditures. And this is why I've been pushing this asset management thing for us to start making sure we're banking money for those future big purchases. But let's be honest, the whole of Oregon doesn't do that in general. So I think that's why you end up turning to a bond. $5 a month per household so that their kids can go to an affordable community college. I think that's more unfair.
Yeah. If you wanna vote for it, you can.
2%, right?
Yeah.
But this is, I'm not arguing that this isn't a good deal, and I'm not arguing that Mount Hood needs it, because I think they do too. I'm just questioning whether or not our citizens should pay for it today. And I know that that's kicking the can down the road, but that's 2% of their population is from Sandy, 2%. What's the assessed value in Sandy, the average assessed house? And I guess it doesn't matter, if we say it's $5 per home, how many homes are there?
Call it 2 to 10. I don't.
So whatever it is, if you just do basic math and say, we're gonna spend this much. It's nothing, it's pennies, I get it,
Right.
but it's pennies on top of pennies, on top of pennies, on top of pennies
Yeah.
that we've just been spending. And I'm
Say no if you want, but we're talking future generations and the ability to get an advanced education.
As I said, Don, I've had a graduate of that college. I know how important it is for schools to get funding from the people that use the school. And I definitely know about the maintenance that that school needs in order to keep it going. I'm asking questions about, is now the time to force,
Mhm.
and we're not forcing anything, honestly, we're just supporting it if we
We're just
choose to,
supporting it.
right? It's not, we're not passing the vote, the citizens still have that opportunity, so it's just whether or not we want to put I want to set my name to it. I'm questioning it, do I want to, because
That's all. we're
it's
getting at.
another $5.
I just added up the number of students that have been enrolled since 2019 to 2024, so 5 years. 2,942 students from Sandy.
Mhm.
So given that the house, we've got 5,000 houses, that's like,
I think that's.
more than
zip
half of the
code.
houses, more
I
than.
do think that's a zip code.
Zip code, not the city.
What's
Yeah,
that?
I think
It's
she
a zip
qualified
code.
that as a zip code, not the city proper, so. We
Oh,
should
it's
be
the Oregon Trail School District. That's right.
correct.
Yes,
So-
I stand correct.
It's okay.
But it's still, it's a
Yeah.
big number and it
Yeah,
grows
but
as
yeah,
you go for
yeah.
longer term. You look at the number of people who've touched it in 20 years,
Right,
it's an awful
Yeah.
lot of our homes
Right.
have had somebody. touch
And they
it.
haven't had a loan in a million years, they need supply.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah. And I like the fact that it was going to the science programs, the health, especially the health stuff, because there's such a need for that. But I also appreciate that, it's a big ask.
I like the idea personally of me voting no, but giving the voters the opportunity
Yeah.
to vote their choice on it. Mine is no solely because I think I don't want to add any more cost to our residents at this time.
Okay.
I move to authorize the Sandy mayor to sign resolution 2025-9 demonstrating city council support for the Mount Hood Community College bond for the May 2025 ballot.
Motion from Counselor Hokinson. Do we have a second?
I will second the motion.
A motion from Counselor Hokinson and a second from Counselor Ramsayer to have the mayor sign resolution 2025-09 demonstrating city council support for the Mount Hood Community College bond for the May 2025 ballot. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay,
3 days.
I'm a nay as well.
Okay, these 3 nays, any other nays? You're a nay? Okay, so that is a 4-3 vote, so motion
support.
fails. Very good.
Okay.
All right,
Noted.
thanks. Okay, our next agenda item is the public hearing for the Urban Renewal Agency Board modification.
Mayor, did you see the script?
Yeah, hold on, let me
Yeah.
get all my stuff opened up here. Okay, we have, do you,
I have another one.
no, I have it here.
Okay.
Okay. So I will open the public hearing for the Urban Renewal Agency Board modification at 7:53. The ordinance number is 2025-08 and the time of the hearing is 7:53. Let's open the public hearing for this ordinance. Are there any abstentions to declare? Hearing none. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none. Tyler, may we please hear the staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. So just a brief history on where we are today. The Sandy Urban Renewal Agency was formed via ordinance 1998-16. And that originally created the Urban Renewal Agency with a board that reflected the Sandy City Council at that time. A few months later, in January of 1999, via ordinance 1998, include 2 additional members beyond just the city council at that time, to include a representative from the Sandy Fire District and a representative from the Sandy business community. Most recently, the representative from the Sandy business community has been the Sandy Area Chamber of Commerce, their executive director. We talked a little bit about this during goal setting, and hence there was a goal established to modify the membership of the Urban Renewal Agency Board to reflect or align with rather just that of the city council instead of having these external representatives. And so the ordinance before you this evening would essentially just repeal ordinance 1998-19 that added those 2 additional members and reinstate the original language, which in essence, I won't read this whole thing, but the powers of the urban renewal board should be exercised or shall be exercised by the Sandy City Council. So just 7 members instead of 9. Some of the benefits of modifying the membership include direct oversight of the board retained by just elected officials instead of having someone that's not elected involved in the decision-making process. The entirety of the board is then accountable to the voters. There's more direct alignment with goals, with the governing body being the same for both entities. There's less of a chance for conflicting plans or directions from one board governing body to the next. Certainly, it's helpful with the consistency in numbers of the budget committee. So Oregon law requires that a budget committee be a similar or equal number of elected officials as appointed officials. We've struggled in the past to even get enough appointed community members on the City of Sandy Budget Committee. So having a renewal board with 2 additional members just made that that much more difficult. Oh, sorry, I heard the question. And then finally, the higher likelihood of full board attendance. So for the last, gosh, maybe a year, 18 months since Sandy Fire District sort of merged with Clackamas Fire, that position has been vacant, or that board seat has been vacant on our side of things.
Contract for service.
Contract for service, thank you.
It's
Appreciate it.
not merged yet.
Yes,
That has to
contract
go-
for service,
That has
thank
to
you.
go to the voters.
For the contract for service. So we've had a vacancy already. So again, aligning the city council with that of the urban renewal board will just make sure that we have a meeting that is most often fully attended, similar to what we have before you this evening. And so staff would recommend adopting ordinance 2025-08, which repeals ordinance 1998-19 and reinstating the original language from ordinance 1998-16.
Great. Okay, just read off the process for public testimony. Each person providing testimony must provide their name and address for the record. If you do not wish to state your address publicly, you must provide it to the city recorder before you sign your testimony. This can be done either in person or via email at recorder@ci.sandy.or.us. If you have documents you wish to be considered by the council, they must be formally placed into the record of this hearing. To do that, either before or after you speak, email your materials to recorder@ci.sandy.or.us, and staff will make sure that your evidence is properly processed. Please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it is fine to simply state that you agree with the testimony of a previous speaker. To offer public testimony, for those joining us in person this evening, please raise your hand to indicate you would like to speak. If you are attending online, click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. If you are attending via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. I will call on each person when it is their turn to speak. Each speaker will receive up to 5 minutes to testify. The city recorder will let you know when you have 20 seconds remaining. So I shall now, is there anyone tonight here or online who would like to testify?
Looking around the room. Mayor, I'll look online for any raised hands on Zoom. And Mayor, I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, very good. Tyler, can you give us a staff recap and recommendation, please?
Yes, Mayor. Staff recommends, or I'm sorry, staff is proposing a modification to the urban renewal board so that the membership more closely aligns with that of the city council. And staff would recommend adopting ordinance 2025-08.
Very good. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Councillor Smallwood and a second from Councillor Henley to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed, 7:59.
Mayor, I think we may need-
Excuse me, all those in favor, you vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote nay.
It's all right.
Public hearing
It's a
is-
lot of moving pieces.
The public hearing is closed at 7:59. Are there any questions or comments?
Guys ready for, you need to do a second reading?
Yeah, we'll need to read it twice.
So, No comments, right? Okay, Jeff, may we get a first reading of the ordinance 2025-08, please?
Yes, Mayor, this is an ordinance repealing ordinance 1998-19 and reinstating section 2 of ordinance 1998-16.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the first reading?
Make a motion, we approve the first reading.
Second,
I'll second.
I have a motion by Counselor Sheldon and a second by Counselor Ramsayer to approve the first reading. Motion to approve, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote nay. Motion passed. Motion to approve the first readings passed unanimously. So Jeff, may I get a second reading of the ordinance, please?
Yes, Mayor, this is ordinance 2025-08, an ordinance repealing ordinance 1998-19 and reinstating section 2 of ordinance 1998-16.
May I get a motion to approve the second reading of the motion
Make a motion to approve the second reading
of the
of ordinance
ordinance?
2025.
May I get a second?
I'll second.
That was you?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Counselor Mayton and a second by Counselor Ramsayer to pass the second reading of the ordinance. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, vote nay. Motion to approve ordinance 2025-08 has passed. Very good.
Thanks, Mayor. I should have added this in the staff report. I'll just briefly mention it now. I did speak with the executive director of the chamber, Chris Jones, and let her know of this potential change this evening, and just discuss ways that the chamber can still be involved in the city process and involved in the urban renewal agency, just not as a voting member on the board. And so I think we're all good there, but I did mention during goal setting that I would do that, and just wanted to make sure that I let you know that that conversation did happen, so.
So the next item on the agenda is updating public contacting rules, resolution 2025-07. Staff report.
Yeah, so our new finance director real quick, is at a conference, but he's here virtually this evening to help facilitate this. So Tyler, I don't know if you want to do a quick intro and then take it over to Ashley.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Tyler Wallace. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Sandy. Like Tyler said, I regret not being able to be there in person with you tonight. And I'm at a OGFOA Finance Conference for a couple of days. And we just had our first day today, and it's been a fantastic conference so far, so I'm excited. The resolution before you this evening is Resolution 2025-7. This resolution updates the city's public contracting rules to reflect changes to state law and model rules. This resolution also includes a proposed contract signature authority threshold change. The City of Sandy's contracting rules are currently laid out in Resolution 2017-28, which means they were last updated in 2017. The state of Oregon has updated their public contracting code and model rules multiple times since 2017. And all statutory changes are reflected in the proposed policy update in this resolution. Staff have been working with legal counsel on updating these rules for quite some time since the Oregon law changes, and we are pleased to bring these proposed changes to council this evening. So public contracting rules generally have different prescribed processes for different types of procurements. These processes are generally laid out by rule or policy and allow smaller dollar contracts to be awarded by less formal processes, intermediate dollar contracts by more involved procurement processes, and large dollar procurements require a more rigorous formal processes. Many of the notable changes in the resolution tonight are changes in the thresholds for these different types of procurements and the different levels. There's a summary table in the staff report for reference. Legal counsel will walk us through some of the changes here in a few moments. So in addition to aligning to state law, there's also some additional reasons to make these changes. As the policy has not been updated since 2017, updating this threshold combats the impact of inflation. Also, This update is needed as Sandy's an extended time period with a number of critical infrastructure development projects. Many of these projects require expediency and procurement processes and contracting. So having procurement and contracting processes that allow for these I'm sorry, that allow for these things to be done in an expedient manner is really important. Meeting these deadlines is critical, as many of these projects is interdependencies with other projects. One of the things we talked about earlier tonight with the wastewater conversation. Updating these thresholds for procurement processes allows the city to move with the nimbleness that these projects require. So I'm going to turn it over to legal counsel Ashley Dougal. That will talk us through some of the changes in the resolution. Ashley.
Sure. Thank you, Tyler. And so some of the changes that we're making, well, as Tyler generally described, all of these changes generally align with state procurement laws. The statutes do allow cities some flexibility in some of these categories, namely personal services. But for the others, the procurement thresholds are set forth in state law. And so it's either an option of adopting those procurement thresholds and those processes or becoming more stringent. With the lower thresholds that you had previously, it was more stringent. What we're doing now is simply aligning you with state law. So as you can see from the table, generally those are increased dollar thresholds across the board. And as Tyler said, those reflect general trends of inflation. I think before this most recent statutory update, I think the last time these thresholds have been amended was in the early 2000s, maybe around 2005. So it was a necessary amendment for those thresholds. Beyond that, we generally updated some other elements of your rules, including for construction-related personal services, which include architects and engineers and other design-related services. We added an element into your rules to allow you to consider cost in certain circumstances as provided by state law. And we also added in a more detailed process for small and intermediate hirings of these design-related service contracts. And other than that, it was a lot of just clarifying your rules to align with state law. So if you have any specific questions about any of these changes, I'm happy to answer those or discuss any of these amendments further.
I don't have a lot of questions about so much the amounts or anything. I'm just wondering like how this is going to change if we, the communication, letting us know what's being spent, where it's being, stuff like that.
So yeah, that's a great question. Your prior threshold for council approval, meaning anything below that, the city manager was authorized to execute without bringing it before council, was 100,000. Now we are recommending 125. So it's a marginal change, but it is still within the general range that we see other cities across Oregon adopting. So I would say it's a marginal shift up, but it's still, again, within that standard range and not a huge change for you all.
So Tyler, would it be possible, kind of to Rich's concerns, that it's not really a concern really, it's just so that we are kind of abreast to finances. Would that be something you could incorporate in your council report when you send out your weekly, you know, if you spent money on something like that, that, hey, here's just an update.
Yeah, I mean, any new contracts we enter into that
Yeah.
haven't gone before the council, I can give you a heads up. Reasonable.
Pretty rare that they're less than 125,000.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a lot of stuff that falls in that category.
Sadly.
Sadly, yeah.
Sadly, yeah, I think, you know, a recent example of something that didn't go before council that was under $100,000, I think, was the roof replacement at the police department. That was still over the budget already, so it was reflected and a conversation was had at some point in time, but it didn't go before the council for a contract, you know, approval at that point. But certainly we can, I can just implement some additional
Just
communication
for
around that.
information.
Yep.
You know, hey, by the way,
I would also add that a common one that falls under that threshold is goods procurement, right? Which we don't always think of as a full contract, but anytime the city executes a purchase order or staff, executes a purchase order, that's still technically a contract,
Sure.
but potentially a small scale goods purchase,
Sure.
right?
I don't wanna.
Yeah, I'm interpreting this as you
Yeah,
don't
I
care
don't
that I
wanna, hey, Lori,
said.
we bought 25 reams of paper
Yeah,
today.
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
Yes. I was thinking in line of,
Yeah.
larger dollars
I
that
know.
have a financial impact is where I was going with that, but fair point. Thank you for clarifying that, because it does really include
Everything.
a wide range.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
And that's the bulk of what falls under 125K.
Yeah. There's only 6 lines on that chart that you can buy from without asking for permission. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are there any other questions?
Tyler, we talked about the provision that we created for the wastewater project.
Yeah.
That's reflected in here, correct?
So, yeah,
Or is it not now?
thank you, Counselor Hopkinson. So no changes have been made since our conversation on Friday. One thing that Counselor Hopkinson and I talked about last week, he recalled that, oh gosh, maybe a year or so ago, we modified some contracting provisions to allow for me to enter into contracts with a higher threshold for public works related, water and wastewater related on-call contracts. That's not addressed in here. That resolution or authority still remains.
That's a separate resolution.
It's a separate act
Thanks.
or action. What I had indicated to Counselor Hopkinson is that we would talk internally with our project team and see if that authority was still, needed or beneficial right now, or if not, bring back a provision to.
I want to make sure it
remove
gets
that authority.
sunsetted and not stays out there forever. So when it's not needed, then it goes away.
There was a sunset written into that, and I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
but There was some language in
That
there.
was just following up on that to make sure that it just doesn't go forever.
Yeah, another example where the signing authority was increased was the construction of Cedar Park. Obviously, now that that's just about wrapped up, that sort of self sunsets, a little bit different situation there. But there have been instances where my signing authority has been increased to achieve that expediency that Tyler Wallace had mentioned. And there may be needs for that again in the future for certain projects, but nothing, right now to note about that.
Any other questions or comments?
Ready for a motion?
Tyler Wallace, can you give us your recommendation?
Yes, staff recommends that city council vote to adopt resolution 2025-7, updating the city of Sandy's public contracting rules and schedule of signature authority.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for the adoption of resolution number 2025-07, a resolution adopting, that's saying that word twice, public contracting rules.
Very good. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Counselor Smallwood and a second by Counselor Maiden to adopt the resolution 2025-07, updating the city of Sandy's public contracting rules and schedule of signature authority. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Tyler. Very good.
Thanks for joining us from your conference.
My pleasure. Thanks.
I hope it's on the West Coast.
He might be on the, I don't know if he's on the next agenda item or not. So the last thing on the agenda is the full faith and credit obligation fund water capital projects.
No, it's the city manager.
Yeah, that's me.
They were asking if it was Tyler.
Oh, yes, no,
Yeah.
Tyler Deem. Sorry, I missed the
Okay.
actual question. Sorry.
Thank you, Tyler Wallace.
Although if he's hanging around, he might have
Okay.
some color to add to this.
Very good.
And we've got Dick in the audience still too, so if there's questions about water projects specifically, he may be called upon to come up here and add some additional context as well. But ultimately, we're here this evening to talk about funding the next phase in our water reinvestment program. As you all are, intimately aware, we've got a rehab happening at the Alder Creek treatment plant, and then we've got some construction that's taking place between Sandy and the Bull Run filtration plant facility, a pipeline, so that we have a redundant water source and adequate water supply to meet our future peak daily demands. And total project cost so far between these two projects is budgeted at $70 million. Of that, about 22 million is Alder Creek, and another 42-ish million for the pipeline project to the Bull Run treatment facility. We've got a good deal of the Alder Creek plant already funded with a combination of low interest loans from Business Oregon or OBDD, kind of interchangeable names there, but the vast majority of that project is fully funded. The pipeline project, however, is not fully funded. In fact, not really funded much at all at this point. We have a $7 million loan for the design and engineering and work for that pipeline project. And now that that is sort of coming to a conclusion and we're getting ready to put it out to bid, actually next month, I believe, putting the project out to bid. This month.
This month.
Yeah. Because we're in March now, it's not February anymore, that's right. So we are actively moving forward in getting that project constructed, and we need some construction dollars to do so. So staff's anticipating over the next 2 years or so, spending about $21 million in capital funds to complete make a great deal of progress on our water projects, hence the $21 million amount here before you this evening. We've looked at a variety of different funding options. I think most recently, the council has probably heard of the possibility of a WIFIA loan on the water side.
And that was for 24.5 million?
That was for 24.5 million. You know, WIFIA comes with some great loan terms, but also some challenges. It's a reimbursement loan, so you've got to have the money up front before you can, submit and be reimbursed from the federal government. There's also significant audit requirements, potentially some Buy America, Build America requirements that may add cost, maybe not, depends on, what materials you're buying and using. But it also, from our past experience, took about 4 years to get the WIFIA loan executed on the wastewater side. Certainly, I don't think it would take 4 years this go around, but we also don't have a lot of time to waste. We've got a strict deadline to meet our bilateral compliance agreement and treat for cryptosporidium. And so that's, why we're moving forward really full steam ahead with this water project right now. And so the full faith and credit option gave us the most flexibility in terms of a quicker closing date, as well as getting all these funds at one time and being able to then draw them down. Essentially, a full faith and credit borrowing is secured by the city's full faith and credit. So, we have a great credit rating, we have strong property tax collections, a good collection percentage. And what we'll do is, we're pledging the full faith and credit of the city, but we'll be using water rate revenues to repay these loans. So it's coming out of the water fund. That's why the focus of the staff report is talking about the water rate model and the water fund having the capacity to pay this back. In addition to the $21 million that's being issued for the construction costs, we're also seeking an additional amount of approximately $4,053,000 to refund or pay off and refinance an existing water loan that was for the connection to the Bull Run Intertie project from 2013, I believe that was. And the intent behind that is, frankly, to just free up more cash and stabilize the rate increases. So we pay about $470,000 a year on debt service for that project right now. Rolling that into this new loan is going to help minimize the amount of cash we need on hand to continue to make annual debt service payments across the board. And so it's really an effort to minimize the spikes, right? We want to flatten out the rate increases as much as possible so that we're not having to do these large, substantial increases continually.
Can I ask a question about that though? I mean, what's the difference in the interest rate? I would assume the 2013 interest rate should be substantially lower than what we're getting on this rate. That's a good question.
Yeah, so the interest rate on that one's about 3%. Our financial model for this new loan builds in a cushion of 0.5%. So we think we'll be closer to 4.5% on the loan. The rate model that we have says 5% right now. We'll refine that once the sale actually closes and we know what that what the actual interest rate is. But to answer your question, well, to add color to this or context to this, the debt service on the $21 million is going to be somewhere in the, I don't have that number exactly in front of me, I have this combined schedule, but somewhere in the realm of about $1 million per year. So we're paying $1 million on this new loan plus another $470,000 on the existing debt service. By paying that off and rolling it into this full faith and credit option, We get to immediate payments for the next 3 years of about $1.1 million. And then debt service escalates up to about $2 million in 2029. So it gives us that flexibility to have less cash outflow on our debt right now and let the rates sort of catch up to when we're going to start needing to pay larger scale debt service payments. The rate model already factors in those larger scale debt service payments because we've already built in all this funding for the project, right? We have a rate model that supports $70 million in project costs. The nuance here is when do all those debt service payments hit, right? And is it, 2 or 3 loans this year? Is there one this year and then one that's a couple years out? And so the intent here is to, as I said, sort of flatten out that repayment so we don't have a big jump all at once right now.
When would that come due? Like, when would that, if you were to stay on the current payment plan, we'll call it, when would that materialize?
What was it, a 20-year? You mean the whole?
No,
one?
the four.
When it's been paid off.
When would we be paying that off?
Yeah, let me.
Because right now it kind of feels like we're just we're kicking the credit card over to a different credit card but paying higher interest rate on it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, you're not wrong. That's certainly the case, but what it does is flattens the rate increases, right? I mean, if we don't refund that, then we'll probably be looking at a rate increase that's higher than what's budgeted in the rate model currently for this next fiscal year, because we have a higher demand for cash payments out for debt service. The WIFIA loan had a more favorable term in the sense that you don't start repayment until the project is completed, which is a benefit, but it's also accruing interest that you're not paying on for the 3 years while we're building this project. So, you're skinning the cat multiple different ways. We're gonna pay it no matter what. It's just a matter of if you pay it, sorry for that analogy. But you're gonna pay it either, with a higher rate increase now and keep all that debt, but maybe pay off this one loan in particular a couple years earlier, or roll it into the other debt. Yes, there's a longer repayment. You might pay more over time, but the impact of the ratepayer is less.
All right, well, I want to minimize that, okay?
I can get you that answer though, real quick on when it would be paid off. Hold on just a second while I pull this up.
But fundamentally, it doesn't matter if we
Right.
agree that we can't.
Yeah.
Keep the rates affordable. It's good.
I mean, the focus here has been, and because we've heard it loud and clear from the council, try to minimize the impact of ratepayers as much as possible. So that's the lens that staff is operating on. Doesn't change how much we need to pay when we need to pay it. It just is a matter of what can we do, what sort of shell, it's not a shell game, but what sort of, management of payment schedules can we do in order to minimize the impact of the ratepayer? And that existing water loan will be paid off in 2035. So we still have 10 years of payment left on that. If we only had, a couple years, I think we'd grit our teeth and figure out a way to make that work, but 10 years is still a lot of years to pay on that existing debt. And so this just seemed like a prudent approach to assist the rates as much as possible.
I'm just a simple guy, Tyler, and I didn't understand your motion about the an additional amount sufficient to refund certain outstanding obligations currently estimated. I was like, why isn't he just asking for $25 million? And
Yeah, fair question.
Instead of writing it out that way,
Yeah,
because I didn't really understand it until you explained it. Anyway.
I will try to capture that in text a little better next go around. Hopefully that's not a next go around, but
Do we know
reached
whether
out-
the motion could just be to approve the resolution?
yeah, I mean, the motion can just be approve resolution 2025-06 in lieu of all the added text if you'd like. I think the title of the resolution is already there, so you don't need to read the whole title.
Just super quick, have we reached out to the Water Bureau to see where they're sitting since they're not currently under construction?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and Dick, you might want to jump up and
Yeah.
shed any additional
just
context.
fine.
if
It's
you-
like, oh,
if you
there
have
it is,
any.
there it is.
Yeah,
No, I'm just a thorn, man.
so that project is on our man for an environmental, natural resource, thank you, component. Frankly, I think that, there's been hundreds of millions of dollars invested in that site. I think that project's gonna keep moving forward. Worst case scenario, it doesn't. Let's assume the doom and gloom of that. We still have to treat for cryptosporidium. We'd be
For
going
sure.
back to that
For sure.
conversation and
No,
Buying
no
raw
questions
water?
there. It's just if we can't tie into the filtration, what are we looking at?
so we'd be going back in time probably 2 years ago.
2022.
2022, when we made the decision to build this pipeline and buy the treated water, would be pivoting to buying raw water from Portland. We need to build a filtration plant. So there are projects that would certainly need to be funded, and this funding would go towards water projects.
That's
We
really
lose
all,
some time for sure, because we've got to,
that's
go back
really
to
all I
square one.
wanted to know was just kind of what's our big picture plan here if something goes.
yeah, so great question. Thank you. The last thing that I would add is timing wise, it's required that 85% of the funding that we obtain through a full faith and credit is spent within 3 years of issuance. That's not going to be a problem at all. We've got this targeted for the next 2 years of spending. So certainly we'll comply with that component of it. We've also been working with our financial advisor from Piper Sandler, who's been helping us along the way with all of our financing for all of our infrastructure projects, as well as our bond counsel from Foster Garvey. That might mean nothing to some of you, but this is the same group of people we've used for all of our large scale infrastructure projects and our previous full faith and credit and revenue bond offerings. So great history with the city of Sandy, really decades long in some cases, maybe not the individual person, but the firm itself. And so they know our history, they're intimately familiar with the projects we're working on. And this really just seemed like the best financial option at this point in time to make sure we had the funding on hand to complete the necessary improvements.
I have a question.
Yes.
So this gets us, the total cost for Alder and the Portland connection is 70 million. So this gets, with all the other stuff we've already gotten, this gets us, we're still $24.5 million short. So what's the plan for that part of it?
Great question. Over the next several months, we're gonna, be putting out a project to bid later this month. We'll get those bids back. We'll be able to determine exactly where that fits in with the overall program budget. Did we budget right on target? Are we utilizing some contingency? Are we not? And so over the next, excuse me, what would you say, take about a year, we'll be able to hone in on all of those project costs. Hopefully, we've done a good job budgeting and we've built in those cushions and contingencies so that we don't end up needing a full $70 million. But this gives us the time to continue to move forward with funding the projects, get a better picture on exactly what those project costs are going to cost that we don't yet have identified. And then we'll be able to hone in on an exact dollar amount of what we need to fund the remaining
Kind
portion
of
of the project.
take it all the way.
We still
Okay.
have a letter of interest into WIFIA, so that's still an option. To fill in that gap, that certainly could be a viable option if we needed to go the WIFIA route, because we have some cash on hand, so we can utilize the WIFIA loan for a different project, but a different portion of the project, but we'd have the pot of money to be able to pay for things and wait for that reimbursement to come in. It also gives us some more time to figure out what our SDC collections look like, depending on what new development happens, how quickly the things that are in the pipeline move, what those new SDC charges look like after the council has a chance to look into those. So I think there's just more pieces of that puzzle that really come into focus over the next several months and will help us figure out exactly what that remaining gap is.
Okay, great. Debbie, you understand that? Huh? Good. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion if we're ready for that.
Make a motion to authorize the full faith and credit loan?
Yeah,
Okay, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that council votes to authorize the city manager to enter into a full faith and credit loan not to exceed 21 million plus an additional amount sufficient to refund certain outstanding obligations.
Don?
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Counselor Sheldon and a second by Counselor Hokinson to authorize city manager to enter into the full faith and credit loan not to exceed 21 million plus an additional amount sufficient to fund certain outstanding obligations. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Aren't you glad you stayed?
Thank you.
I'm thrilled I stayed.
Now you know we can move forward.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's always good to have money in the bank.
thank
Now we
you.
go.
Take
Thank
care.
you so much.
Thanks,
Dave.
Talk to you Thursday.
Thanks again. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Report from the city manager.
Thank you. So first and foremost, well, I shouldn't say first and foremost. First on my list, you received a memo last week regarding some pump track improvements that need to be made to alleviate the drainage concerns over there. We are on the contractor's schedule for March 1st. And the plan is to have those improvements made before the March 10th, March 10th. Sorry. And the plan is to have those improvements finalized before spring break, so the pump track should be fully draining and usable during that week off when students and families are going to be there wanting to utilize it. If you have any questions about that work or that memo, feel free to let myself or Ashley know, but wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that that issue is being resolved. There's also a Facebook post that the city put out regarding that work that's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks.
Will that also curtail the mosquito problem?
That's
Because you're
part
looking at the
2. That's my
mosquito
my second bullet point.
And floating cats.
I hadn't planned on addressing the floating cat
I missed that.
issue,
Yeah.
but yeah, we can't control what wildlife do
Was it one
walking
of the
around.
strays from over there, the feral?
I don't know the answer to that.
I thought that was in the bowl, in this, in the. I think
It was in one of them.
It was
Yeah,
in the skate
it
bowl.
was in the
It
skate
was
and
full, full of water and couldn't get out, or it was soaking wet and couldn't get out either way.
I think it was soaking wet probably from the rain.
Yeah.
Not because there's no standing water in the
Right.
skate bowl,
But couldn't get
yeah.
out.
But no, with respect to the mosquito issue that was raised, Rochelle and her team are looking into it. Yes, there is certainly some standing water in the park. That's the case with nearly every park in the state right now, right? We had a lot of rain, slow draining soils. My neighborhood park has had some mosquitoes, but certainly nothing that I would have categorized as outrageous, but nonetheless, there is some mosquitoes over in that area. Rochelle's working with her team to follow our integrated pest management policy to determine what we can safely use to help treat or mitigate or minimize the mosquitoes that are over there. Certainly, if it is stemming from a standing water issue, that's going to be resolved over the next couple of weeks, and so that should provide some benefit. But that water will drain somewhere to a rain garden, unless it's not in a populated area of the park, it's off to the side, so that should help as well, but we'll continue to look and see what sort of organic or least invasive options we have to help mitigate any mosquito issue that is in and around the park. But that will be a time will tell sort of thing. We've got to see how much of that issue gets resolved with the drainage work that we're gonna do and then go from there. So
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
that? It wasn't clear from the Facebook post how much of the park is going to be closed from March.
That's a good.
great question.
Yeah,
My understanding is pump track and immediately adjacent to the pump track, as well as part of the field that goes towards the trail to where Cedar Ridge trailhead is, because that's where the boring will take place to get the water to drain out. I don't believe there is any impact to the skate park, but I will follow up with Rochelle tomorrow and let you know if there is what the full scope of that is. But my understanding was that there was not to be an impact to the skate park itself.
and then can we make sure we get that on social media as well?
Yeah, we can clarify that post, sure.
I'm sorry, to make sure what?
Just to Counselor Hanley's point,
Right.
and thank you for bringing that up, because I thought the same thing when I read that social media post. It just wasn't clear how much of the park was gonna be closed.
Right.
And so that way people know
Yeah.
exactly what to expect and they don't go down there and get upset, so.
And what does closing the park mean? Caution tape up, cones, do not enter signs? Or is it just gonna be, there's a big hole here, use common sense, don't go in it?
There will not just be a big hole with
I
no.
You just,
with-
you never know.
Yeah, I don't know if they're using like the folding A-frame signs or if it's cones, but there will be something, some sort of perimeter around that
Okay,
area.
so it will be
They're not-
very clear that that area is being worked on
Yeah.
and you probably
So-
shouldn't be in there.
To be clear, they're not digging like big trenches, right? They're boring and there's gonna have to be a little bit of a hole to get the initial
Right.
boring component into the ground,
Right.
right? But there's not gonna be like a 6-foot deep hole that someone
Okay,
could fall
I
into.
wasn't worried about that. I'm
Um,
more worried about how are we gonna make it clear
Yeah,
that those areas are being worked on? And it's gonna be, what, 2 weeks? And then it'll be all done, but to keep people out while the work is being done to not create more work before we can get it complete.
sure. Yeah, we'll make sure that that's signed appropriately. And you just raised another point. There is probably closer to about 4 weeks worth of total work, right? Because they're gonna bore the holes or bore the trenches, get the water draining, but then there's still some cleanup and after effects that need to be remedied. So the pump track will be open after 2 weeks, but there will still be some crews down there doing some other plantings, final touches, things like that that need to be sort of repaired and rectified after this work is done. So don't want to sell you a misleading story that you're not going to see any other contractors working down there during spring break or after spring break, but the pump track should be open for that time.
Sorry, and one more question,
Nope.
is the trail, you said part of the field going under the trail, will the trail be closed?
That is a great question. I will follow up with you tomorrow about that, but council as a whole, we'll clarify that Facebook post as well, to make sure that the community knows. I did not ask about the trail, but yeah, we'll find out. Quick update on Public Works Director. So that position has been vacant since November. Jeff has graciously been filling in as the acting Public Works Director and helping alleviate some of the added workload there. Thank you, Jeff, for that. The first recruitment didn't yield a lot of candidates, so we went back out to do a second round. Second round did get us quite a bit of candidates. We're moving forward with 3 of them later this month to do interviews. Angie and I proposed a couple different dates, so we're trying to figure out what works well for the candidates to make sure everyone can be here on the same day to minimize the impact of staffing and the interview panel and all that. So I'll follow up with more specific information around the timeline with that, but just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we are moving forward with that, and hopefully we'll have a permanent Public Works Director in the chair soon.
Will there be counselor or council representation in the interviewing, or is that all internal to you guys?
That had not been part of the plan.
Okay.
I didn't hear the comment. I'm
I
sorry.
just wondered if anybody from council was participating in the interview panels or not. Sounds like no.
That had not been part of the plan. We can talk more about that if there's some interest, but we do have a panel already identified of key personnel that work with that person, as well as are involved in our capital projects that are ongoing, to make sure that there's a broad, mix of views and questions and feedback that's provided.
Do they do rounds of interviews for city positions? Is it just one panel interview?
It's dependent on the position.
For this position?
For this position, there will be a panel interview and then likely just a one-on-one with me after the panel interviews. That's how we foresee it, but Angie and I are still working on finishing touches of that
So like
process
panel and
as
final
well.
fit,
I'm sorry.
panel and final fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot going on here, right? So it's what's your experience with capital construction projects and the size and scope of those projects? And what's your experience in managing staff and the size and scope of those staff? And lots of
I'm very interested in their asset management acumen, what they bring to the table in addition to capital projects. A lot of people can build them, but can they plan?
Can you maintain
budget,
it?
Maintain them? Can they run a maintenance operation that's efficient, that sort of thing, so.
Yeah.
And
That's a great point.
and that is a great point, and I assume you're gonna be okay if like one of these candidates is not a suitable fit, you'll be okay walking away.
Yeah, I mean, the intent here is that we need to find someone that's qualified and someone that can bring their experience and knowledge to the city of Sandy and work well with the staff and contractors and consultants and the whole team, right? So it's certainly got to be a qualified individual that can rise to the occasion of what we need in Sandy right now. And that's a big job.
It's a big job.
It's a big job.
What changed from 0 to 3? Like, did you go out with a wider net or like more geographic or?
I think it
what?
was timing.
Just timing?
It was right before the holidays. It's just a rough period of time. We experienced that same thing with the finance director search the prior year. Just, yeah, not a lot of people want to throw their hat in the ring when, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, families are at home, winter break, whatever it is. So it seemed like just pivoting by, another 4 weeks and starting in January for the second round, gave people that were interested some more flexibility in getting their resumes in and submitted.
I was gonna say, so the guys that made the cut, they're the ones that don't work the holidays.
Yeah.
That's our takeaway.
And then last but certainly not least, budget committee. So we are quickly approaching budget season. Historically, I think actually my entire time here, we've never had enough applicants to warrant interviews for the budget committee. That's not the case this time. We have 5 vacancies and 7 applicants. So we need to identify an interview board or interview process. I assumed we would use something similar to all of our other boards and commissions where there's 2 or 3 council members that sit in and then provide a recommendation to the council to appoint those. So I'm really looking at you, Mayor, and anyone else that has feedback. Do you have a handful of council members you'd like to appoint to that board? And then we can work on getting a timeline laid out.
Who's interested in reviewing the committee members?
Jumping for joy.
Yeah, a lot of month later.
I'll throw my name in a hat. then
Okay.
someone else.
Rich, Lindy, Chrissy? Sure. Okay.
Those 3? Okay.
Okay, perfect. We'll send out a doodle poll to see what your availability is and then reach out to
When are you thinking? Like what timeframe?
Quick,
I know we're.
pretty quickly. We'll do budget hearings mid to late April, and I'd like to have an opportunity to do an onboarding meeting with the newly appointed budget committee members late this month or that first week of April. So we really need to kind of jump on this over the next couple weeks. I guess in a perfect world, if there was a way to get them appointed by March 17th, which is a really quick turnaround. April 7th, we need to get them appointed by so that we can do an onboarding and get them up to speed before.
Are you
budget
looking at
hearings.
having the budget committee meetings?
The mayor and I have not worked on identifying those dates, but historically, we've kicked off the last 2 biennium, we've kicked off the budget. The second council meeting in April, so that would be like April 21st, and then we've done a series of Monday meetings. Whether or not we follow that same timeline, I don't know if we'll do that exact same thing, but I envision the latter half of April.
Okay, I'll, just as a heads up, I will be out of town at a work conference that entire week.
The week of the 21st.
21st through
Okay.
25th, yeah.
Okay,
Will you be available on Zoom at all?
I'll be on the East Coast. That'll be hard to ask,
Okay.
so.
okay. It's good to know.
Okay.
All right, thank you. That's all I have this evening.
Good, all right. Council reports? Don?
Sure. Well, obviously, I'm disappointed with the mountain thing, and I apologize for letting my emotions show. I wanted to put a different angle on it. First of all, I didn't realize that it would be such a 3 to 4 vote, so. Long time ago, one of my forays into public service was getting a bond pass for the high school. It's a very difficult path, and getting entities, whether they're committees or institutions, or I didn't have to, well, even coordinating with the council at the time, you look for that support wherever you can get it. And it's an important part in getting that bond passed. It's also hard for me to see that one go because that's Gresham's college. And we've had a point, an hour before that discussion that we need to reach out with our Gresham Council and make some connections. Not that one thing's going to say no to the other, but they're all tiny linkages that can help build a stronger relationship. I think we missed a point. You go back to the resolution, you look at the 3 points that were in that resolution. I think we all agree with those. So, that it's a valuable service, the community needs it and so forth. So, and that it's a valid and important investment for the school. So I'm disappointed. This is my rant, but I'll let it go. So thank you for hearing me out, and until the next vote.
I actually wanted to say something on that point, but from the other side, I appreciate the way that this council really tries to respectfully and to hear each other out. And I think my mind was completely changed in that we are requiring a lot from I'm going to kind of cry about this. We're requiring a lot from our community members right now. And the thought of us recommending or, spearheading something else. I mean, I will definitely vote for that. I will definitely vote for that on my own, but the thought just doesn't feel like it is my position or my place right now to recommend one more dollar out of pocket that we don't absolutely need at this point. So there.
Any updates on library or anything like that?
Nothing yet, nothing.
Okay.
I have nothing. I'm good. I haven't done my transit meeting yet. That is in 2 weeks. And so the waterway's heavy. It always does. I think it always will. I think we all try to do what's best for everybody. And it just is gonna fall where it's gonna fall, and I think we do the best we can with what we have.
Okay, Rich?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot. The only thing I would say is I attended C4, it was before our last meeting that I wasn't here for, so, out of that. I know 2 names went forward for the mayor. I don't know how, for mayors for the library or at the county level, for that. That's what I'm looking for, not library board, but
Advisory.
advisory,
Yeah,
whatever they're
yeah.
doing. So I know Kathleen's name was one of them, as well as, yeah, the candy there, so I haven't heard any more about that. And then I'll be back at that on the 6th, so later this week, so. That's all I got.
No report?
Wow. I put in an application for the Mount Hood Economic Alliance. I had to go through a formal vetting process and I received word that I was nominated. So I will be on the board for the Mount Hood Economic Alliance for our city. I meet with their president next week. The week of the 17th to get introduced to what my responsibility will be. And I'll start attending that. Not been on a board, I have not been on a parks meeting yet. I've been on only one wastewater meeting. I haven't seen another one for that yet. And
This week.
Thursday.
Okay, I'll be there. And I'm just an alternate on the planning commission and a C3 member, so got all kinds of meetings, but none yet.
Great.
Thursday, I'll be there. Oh, and last but not least, I just want to say, Don, I apologize if I came across rude to you earlier.
No,
I just,
no.
in any way, I just want to make sure I felt kind of bad, but I don't feel bad because I do think that you allow me to give my voice, and it's pretty loud sometimes. I'm emphatic about Mount Hood Community College because my kids went there early. They graduated early and I want to support them, but I'm gonna do that all individually. I just couldn't find myself to do it as a counselor, and I didn't try to spearhead anything. It was just the way I was feeling today. And I knew I was gonna feel that way before. And I know that it's important to you, and I try to support you when I can.
I appreciate it.
That's
Okay,
it.
thank you. I also want to thank everybody for voting their conscience and, you know, how they explain their rationale. That's really helpful for folks. And I completely agree. It really is just going to be a vote for everybody, but folks that do support it can post on their own and support it however they feel called to. I just want to thank our code enforcement folks, Chris and Tyler's leadership on the whole Barker Courthouse issue that we've had. That went, it was just like one of those total transformations that the neighbors are so appreciative of. There's still the cat issue that they're dealing with, but getting rid of the RV and all the trash and garbage that was, around there was huge. So really appreciate that. And like I said, those neighbors are just thrilled. And I think that's just promising to kind of think that we can, we need to kind of deal with these before they get that bad, but it is possible to kind of really make a difference in those neighborhoods and for those neighbors. I was a little bit, I understand we're not having the carnival with the Sandy Mount Festival. I was a little bit curious about, I think who's on the committee? You're on you two are on the committee as liaison to the Sandy Mount Festival. And I'm just wondering, you may need to reach out to those folks to.
Don't even know who they are.
Right, well, that's job one then, is figuring out who they are. Yeah, I don't know, they have a website, they're on the Facebook and everything else. So just kind of making contact with them and you know, just kind of keep us all posted on what's going on and help us understand how we can work together to make it a community success. The Sandy River Watershed Council had kind of gone bust back in 2021, I believe. They had to close down for different reasons. They have evidently kind of risen from the ashes to kind of reincorporate again. There was a meeting that I didn't find out about until the day before on Saturday by Glen Otto. And so there's some more, I'm trying to find out more information about that, but it's something that I think we'd want to, I was a little bit surprised that we weren't, considered a stakeholder to kind of invite to the meeting. Because Tyler said he didn't know anything about it either. So I did kind of share that view because I guess we were the original folks to kind of incorporate them. And I think we were their fiscal agents and stuff. And so,
Carl's been kind of.
I was gonna say that was
connection to
probably
that.
because of Carl, because he went to
well, no,
all.
this was before Carl even got on council.
But I mean, for the last.
It was like
10
Don
years,
Allen,
Carl's-
Linda.
Carl
Well,
has-
oh, right, yeah,
has kept
right,
that relationship
yeah,
very much
yeah.
alive.
That's all I was
Yeah,
getting at.
sure.
Mhm.
And so I did let them know that, Carl's not on council anymore, but that just, we need to kind of be having good communications. The other thing I'm thrilled about is the pump track improvements getting done before spring break. I'm just thrilled that's getting fixed and we can go forward. I met with both Senator Merkley and Representative Dexter the last couple weeks and just talked about funding. I had our little briefing paper that we are asking for $6.8 million for the wastewater proposals. And so there's not, there's actually two different funding sources that I think they draw from the same pot of money, but they both get to kind of have their own say as to who gets it. I don't know if Oregon will even be in line to get much of it, but those two folks are the ones that will get it for us if there's anything to be gotten. So making connections there is really helpful. The issue that came up on Facebook this week was utility bill timing, because this short month for February, but also I know we had folks, we were onboarding the new billing clerk and some other issues that came about, but people were upset the fact that, your bill comes out and it says, bill date February 21st, but you don't get it electronically in your email till the 27th. And then the bill is due by like March 7th or something. Anyway, so we're just kind of working on that. I did post something today to just let folks know. Tyler Wallace did a great job of kind of just creating a response for folks. Hopefully we can kind of get that bill timing a little bit tighter so that folks aren't freaking out that they haven't even got, I guess some people didn't even have their hard snail mail bill until as of Saturday, they still didn't have it. So as part of that whole issue, another gentleman kind of reached out to me and kind of asked, what am I doing? What have I done lately to try to deal with these, he's on fixed income and all those, concerns. And I kind of reached out to him with just some pretty good explanations about how we got, why the bills are what they are, what's been done, what am I doing, and are the rest of this council is doing and our staff are doing to try to get those under control. And he really showed a huge amount of appreciation. And he did say, he said, I don't think people go to your website and read all that. It was just really helpful. He says, can I share this? And so I think it is really important that this public communications about the utility bills really needs to kind of get developed here in the next month, because just these key messages, once people kind of understand it, of course they don't like it, but at least they know kind of what to expect and what the chance of relief is in the future. If we do get some more grant money and also, and what's being done in the short term and the long term. So that's, I think, really helpful. The Economic Development Group, I know we've got some, we met and kind of talked about some things. I was going to look at a survey of those folks to just see kind of where we wanted to focus, but in hindsight, I want all of us to look at the economic development plan that's already been done and kind of try to hone in on that and set some priorities of what actions should we be considering first. We've got some, I think, low-hanging fruit, but and then there's other stuff that just can't go forward because of the moratorium or some other issues. So I do want everybody to get familiar with what the possible actions are and then have a good discussion about which ones especially the ones that are identified as high priority, can kind of go forward as a priority to get done first. The same thing kind of,
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
you lost me in that.
Okay.
Sorry, are you referring to the Economic Development Committee or are you referring to council?
the Economic Development Committee,
Okay.
but I'm also having the economic development plan that this group approved. We need to kind of make sure that we're tying everything together so that the priorities that are in that plan that we approved are reviewed. And what I'm trying to do ultimately is just kind of figure out, and actually you raise a good point, because right now I was a little bit sick this past 2 weeks, so everything's a little bit fuzzy. But what we talked about was, it probably is a good idea to kind of have that be discussed here at the council level and kind of figure out first a little bit on what we see are the priorities. We identified high priorities, or the consultants did, and let's just get on the same page about, which ones are the low hanging fruit and what aren't. And then give that direction to the Economic Development Council to kind of act on those priorities. So I appreciate you bringing that up. We are going to be pursuing also the Public Safety / Community Livability Advisory Board and get that going here in the next month. And then the Budget Committee, yeah, I'm glad we're getting that started too. So everybody kind of get geared up for kind of what they want to see in the future there.
Wasn't there one other committee we had talked about during our goal session?
For the urban renewal?
For the, I thought it was for the police.
That was, I think that's the new title that she gave. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the homeless task force. We thought about.
I got you.
It was originally.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
It got expand.
Yeah.
well, it's some of it is, and again, we're also gonna have a little, what do we focus on first kind of thing, because there's the public crosswalks downtown, there's the, some other safety stuff, there's the homeless issues, there's quite a few different things, so what do we want to focus on first, because we can't do it all at once. That's all I have, but thank you, everybody that presented tonight, and that was kind of a big packet to get through, so thank you for your patience, and I appreciate Dawn for filling in for me 2 weeks ago, so that was really helpful, because I was
Straight my elbow.
So, any other comments? No? Adjourned today.